Oh, and we're live. Oh, it's been a long time since you've done a live stream when you sit down to go live and then you think, what's the button again that you push to make everything go live? Oh, I found it. So obviously, so good to have you here. Hello, everyone. This is the pre-show for today's 220-1001 Core 1A Plus study group. Hello, chat room. Hello, everybody. We have about 10 minutes until we get started. We start at the top of the hour. You can see we are at 11:50 local time. So we will be doing everything in the first hour for A Plus Core 1, specifically the 220-1001 exam. There's more than one exam right now. So that's the one we're working with today. And then in the after show, which is after the first hour, I open up the chat room and you can ask questions. So we can talk about things there. But I see folks already in the chat room. We've got Tacoma, Washington. We've got the Netherlands. We got Canada in Alberta. Good to have you here. We've got Inglewood, California, home of the LA Rams. Well, isn't St. Louis the home of the Rams? I'm going to have to check that. We need a fact check on that. Hello, Cleveland, Ohio. Oh mio, oh mio. We got Chicago. We got Maryland, my Maryland. Hey, Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island. You'll have to check it. Now, which one? I think on the Core 2, I need to check my study groups. You'll have to check back. Hold on. I got to figure this out. Because Vancouver Island came up recently. Is it Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday. Thursday will be more Vancouver Island. Hello, Maryland and New Jersey. I know the Rams moved to L.A., but I like to throw that out there. Just like the Browns in Cleveland. Whoops. Oopsie. It's one of those things. It's one of those things. We can pause this. This needs to get paused. Very nice. I think we're in pretty good shape. Are we recording down here? We are recording. You can see my silence going there. We are streaming, which means YouTube gets a copy of this. So really, we got 2 recordings going here, 1 recording going there, and then who knows what happens next. We'll figure it out. Hello, Jefferson City, Missouri, and New Jersey, and St. Vincent. Good to see you again, Malk. Thanks for being here. We've got all new A-plus questions in this first hour. And they're new questions because I write them new every month, but I now have to make a decision of which study group, which set of exam objectives I go with next month. It's going to be that time. We're sort of in the middle time where some books are out, most books are not on the new exam. So we have to make tough decisions here shortly. Hello, Utah and Cardiff and Scully. So glad to see the folks from Scotland checking in. We were just, in fact, me and Mrs. Professor Messer were just looking over pictures the other night of our trip to Scotland, which was phenomenal. Just phenomenal. We got a lot going on there. All right, cameras look good. We got about 6 minutes before we get started. We get that. Hello, Memphis, home of the blues, home of amazing barbecue. Haven't been to Memphis in a while either. We need to make that happen soon. There's Austin, Texas, home of great barbecue. Austin, perhaps even, I won't say even more so. It's a different barbecue in Memphis than Austin. I go around and eat some barbecue. And of course, Austin, there's all that ridiculousness around. It's almost ridiculous, the barbecue in Austin. It's a little fanatical, which is, I think, good. I think fanatical's a great thing. Hello, Cleveland and South Carolina and Atlanta. We got a lot of folks checking in. Thanks for being here. We'll see how we do with our questions this time. We'll have to see how this goes. Hello, Louisiana and Aruba. 5-minute warning. There it is. 5-minute warning, just like they do in the NFL. I look forward to your cards and letters. I have a question about the OSI model versus the TCP/IP model. Well, that's a rather pointless exercise, but unless you're taking a course somewhere else that you need to know the TCP/IP model. The TCP/IP model is a model that I guess I've only heard referenced ever in a classroom. Like I can't find any other reference to the TCP/IP model anywhere. When we talk amongst each other in the industry, you're designing a new network, you're implementing a new network infrastructure, you're troubleshooting a network problem. We universally speak in OSI model terms. It is the language of networking, the OSI model. It's a way that you can get across an idea to someone and they instantly know what you're talking about. The TCP/IP model, ironically, is one of those where the IP model fits our current technologies slightly better, but we never talk about it anywhere outside of a classroom. So that's it. If you see someone talking about the IP model in the Network Plus exam, you are either looking at very, very, very old Network Plus materials when it used to be in there. And I mean, that's like 2 or 3 versions ago. But it's not in there now. So, and they don't use it in A+. They don't use it in Network Plus. We don't use it at all in any of the CompTIA 3 exams. And quite honestly, we don't use it anywhere anyway. We just don't use it. So stick to the exam objectives. You're fine. Don't worry about other topics that go off the rails a little bit. Look at Sam coming in before we even get started with the $20 Canada super chat. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for the super chat. Sam says it was largely thanks to your study materials that I'm now A+ certified as of May 30th. I will argue that largely it was your studying. But I'm happy to hear about the story though. Showing my appreciation with a super chat. Your appreciation is appreciated. Thank you, Sam, for the super chat. We sure appreciate that. As I often mention, it's not necessary. It's not required. It does help keep the lights going. So live streams require some type of internet connectivity, and those internet service providers, they want monthly fees for some reason, and that sure helps with keeping everything up and running. So thank you, Sam, for your support, and congratulations on your A+ certification, which is fantastic. Texac says, just finished my A+ certified as of today. Congratulations. So a lot going on. All right, we got 2 minutes. I should probably figure out if I've got everything ready to go. How long do these usually last? Well, if you're on my side, Frank, a lifetime. No, that's not the stream. That's just everything. The stream is usually the first hour is Q&A. The second hour, and however long that goes, is usually just you asking me questions. So the first hour is me asking you. The second hour, we turn around and you ask me. So ask me anything sort of thing, and we can do that. So absolutely. What software do I use to stream? I used to use OBS. Before that, I used something else. There's been a number of different things that I've used throughout the years. Right now, I'm using this thing up here. It is a Blackmagic design streaming box. And you can't really see it. Let's see if I have a light. You can't really see it down here. It's this small box right here that my light is on, right here. The box is only like 6 inches long, but it's in a rack mount. It's this tiny little streaming box, and it streams at 4K max, although I am streaming at 1080p because YouTube does not support very fast response, very fast latency if I do 4K. And we tend to be interactive, so that's why. Does my certification expire? Oh, yes. It expires 3 years, 3 months, 3 years after you take it. If it's after it's retired, well, it doesn't matter what they do with the exams. You know, once you pass your exams and earn a certification, it's good for 3 years. At that point, they could retire the exam every day. Wouldn't affect you. You already took your exam. You're good. You're good for 3 years. It doesn't matter. So, for example, well, we'll talk about this in the first few minutes about how that will affect folks who are working with the versions that we've been working with before. Okay, it's top of the hour. let's go to Keynote. Let's look for a green light. We got it. We got it. Green light. Green light. Click it. There we go. Time for a live stream, everybody. Let's see if we can figure out how this thing works. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2022 Professor Messer it's the 220-001. Almost made us a Security Plus study group all of a sudden. No, it's the A Plus study group. It's the 220-1001 Core 1 A Plus study group. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. In this live stream, I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we'll see how well you do with answering those questions. In the second hour, I'll kind of turn the boat around, and you will ask me questions, whatever they happen to be. They can be about technology. They can be about life. They can be about anything you'd like. I don't know if I'll answer all of those, but I'll certainly take your questions at that point. Well, certainly something we can work towards. If you would like to join us and you are live and you would like to answer these questions online, all you have to do is pop open a new browser window and go to this URL, professormesser.com/QA. ProfessorMesser.com/QA is the link. There's a question that's even waiting for you right now if you go over there. There's also an app that you can use because, of course, there is. It is the Socrative Student app. That's the one you'd like from your favorite app store. You can find that, and if you use that app, it will ask you for a room name. The room, as it is named Professor Messer, all one word. PROFESSORMESSER, exactly the same as my domain name. That is the name of the room. And if you don't put that in or you put it in wrong, you'll end up in a room with nobody else in there and there won't be any questions, and it's decidedly a different experience. So you should absolutely make sure you type that in and that there is a question waiting for you on the screen. This question that's there is one from last month. So we'll see what we remember from last month. This is our rewind question to get us going. This question asks, a network technician needs to run a 10 gigabit per second network between a copper switch and a server. What is the minimum category of cable required for this task? Is it category 3, category 5, category 5E, category 6, or category 6A? Now, as always, we don't answer in the chat room. We answer online, and you follow the link that's right there on their screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer that online. Now, if you're watching this on a replay, that link will not be available to you, but everybody that's here and that's in the chat room can go to that link right now and lock it in. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Well, thank you for being here. We do one of these study groups every month. We're so happy to have you here. When we're not doing a live stream, we are behind the scenes continuing to create content. Over the last month, I think we've put out about 60 videos. It's just constant motion right now. There's a lot going on. And if you want to see all the videos that we put up, you can go to professormesser.com/YouTube. That will take you directly to my YouTube channel. Of course, we have Q&A every day of the week. You can find your A+ Q&A at professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram if you like your Q&A with a nice picture to go along with it. And it's in a carousel, so you can swipe through to see if you know the answer and to see more about the picture that I put in on the Instagram side. Don't forget that you can earn a 1 hour of a webinar category CEU just by being here. Don't have to do anything else. Well, there's one extra thing you should do, and I'll talk about that. Sometime during this first hour, I will explain to you how you can get an email from me that verifies that you are here for this 1 hour of a webinar category continuing education unit credit, or CEU credit. So listen in sometime during this first hour. It will be important for you to earn that email. Let's go through and talk about where we are with the A+ exam. We're already talking about this in the chat room already. There are 2 A+ exams right now that people have been taking for years. This 220-1001 and 220-1002. These 2 exams were released on January the 15th of 2019. So they've been around for a number of years now. In fact, we know now that CompTIA is planning to retire these exams on October the 20th of 2022. That will be the last day that you can take these exams. After October 20th, you cannot take the 221,001 or the 221,002. They will no longer be available to you. So if you're currently in the process of studying for one or both of these exams, make sure you get both of them done, completed, and passed by October 20th. If you don't, you'll have to start over with a new version of exams. So it's a timing issue at this point. Right now, you got plenty of time if you're planning to take these two exams and pass them. But there are other options available. We'll talk about that in just a moment. The current version of the A+ exam in both of these exams is 90 minutes for each one of them. So you have 90 minutes on the clock, and it goes by pretty quick. Time management is such an important thing on these exams. On the 1001, you need to score 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. On the 221,002, you need a 700. You have to do a little bit better on the 1002, and it's on the same scale. Once you pass these exams, they are good for 3 years. It doesn't matter that the exams retire in October. At that point, you're already certified. It doesn't matter what they do with the questions that they ask. You've already passed your exams. As I mentioned in the pre-show, they could change the exams every day. They could retire them every day. It wouldn't affect you because you would already be A+ certified. So if you are currently working towards the 221,001 or 221,002, you should probably keep doing that. That is the best option for you right now. Just make sure you complete both of them before that October 20th date. Now, as usual, when an exam is being retired, a new version of exams are made available. And they are made available well before the retirement date, which means right now we are in an overlap period where you could take a brand new set of exams, or you could take the exams that have been around for 3 years now. The newer exams are numbered the 220-1101 and 220-1102. They were released on April the 20th of this year, so they haven't been around for very long. Not long at all. In fact, if you go looking for books on Amazon, there's not a lot of books out there because this exam was just released, and it takes a number of months for this training content to get out, get done, get published, and be available to you. That's a normal process when this changeover happens. This is not unusual. This is just the way that physics works, I guess, if you wanted to think of it that way. The exam requirements are identical to the existing version, so nothing really changed with the process. Nothing really changed with the format of the exams at all. My recommendation to you is that if you are just starting your exam studies, you have a choice to make. And you can think to yourself, am I going to be able to complete both of these exams by October the 20th? If you think you can, the much easier path for you is going to be the 221,001 and 1002, just because there is so much more content available on the market. There's so much more out there that you could take advantage of. There are videos, there are books, there are labs, there are extensive training options and Q&A. So you've got plenty to choose from. But you'll notice over the next month or 2 or 3 that more books will be available, more training classes will be available, more things will happen over the coming months. So if you're planning and thinking, maybe I'll instead study for the 1101 and 1102, that's a perfectly reasonable option. You just have to keep in mind, am I going to study right now? I wonder where I'm going to get a book from. That's your whole challenge with doing that. Both exams are functionally, structurally identical to each other. What's really changed is the content in both of these exams. There's quite a bit changed. I think in the 1101, there is 30% of the content is new. In the 1102, 40% of the content is new. So there's a lot of content that's brand new. Obviously, that means on the 1101, there's about 70% that's the same as far as the exam objectives are concerned. And on the 1102, it's 60% of the content is about the same. So there is that option too. You get to decide which one of these you're planning to take. And if you have more questions about that, we can absolutely talk about that in the after show as well. I'll be glad to go through that again. The exams, whether you're taking the 1101 or the 1001 or the The 1000 series or the 1100 series are identical to each other. In Core 1, which is the one we'll be talking about today, we're going to discuss mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So all of those topics will be covered somewhere in here today. We will go through those. This, by the way, is identical. I could have just put 220, 1X01 and 1X02 because Core 1 and Core 2 is exactly the same on both of the exam versions from what's on this page. So it makes it very, very easy. Now, if you're planning to study for and take your 1001 exam, we have extensive study materials available for you on the Professor Messer website. Of course, all of my videos are available for you to watch absolutely free. Just go to YouTube. You don't have to register. There's nothing behind a paywall. We're not putting a little bit out there and hoping that you'll purchase more. No, it's all out there. There's nothing more for me to give you. It's all out there on the YouTube. So have a look at that. Some folks would like a downloadable version. They would like MP3 audio versions. They would like additional course notes and practice exams and other pieces of this. You can find that on my website with my success bundle. Go to professormesser.com/1001success. And hopefully, perhaps by this weekend, there will be a 1101 success bundle on the website too. This is the natural progression. As these things are completed, they are put on the website and made available to you. And of course, if you would like to watch this or listen to this study group afterwards, I have a podcast version of this. You can go to professormesser.com/podcast, and you can get an audio version of this that can be automatically downloaded to your favorite podcast listening program. I also have the video replay of this available immediately afterwards. Takes a couple minutes to process, and then YouTube just makes it available automatically. So very quickly, you'll be able to gain access. And what's nice, if you look next month, or not next month, but tomorrow, over the next day, you will see that there will be timestamps added to the video description, which helps you jump to exactly what you would like to find. Thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's listening to this right now on the replay. Hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. She's the one that puts together all of those timestamps. So now you can go back years to find exactly what you're looking for. Well, we only do these live streams every so often. So when we're not here, we're usually in a chat room. You can find us on our Discord server at professormesser.com/Discord. We'd love to have you join us. If you have other questions or you just need to send me a DM regarding whatever thing is going on, you're welcome to do that at professormesser.com/Discord. I'll also remind you that eventually you are going to need to take your exam. Normally, you would log into the website, Pearson VUE, and you'd purchase a voucher, which then allows you to take the exam. But why would you pay full price for a voucher when there are discounted vouchers already available on my site if you are in the US or Canada? You can go to professormesser.com/vouchers and select already a pre-discounted voucher. You don't have to find a voucher code. You don't have to play with codes that you find on some sketchy third-party website. They're just already discounted. Everybody has access to the discount because it's built in. And if you purchase on my website, you get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. A book, by the way, you can't purchase anywhere. It is only available with my Success Bundle or with these vouchers, and might give you some life hacks, some life tips on how you can get a few more points on your exam. And I even give you some strategies that I use when I take my exams. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was, a network technician needs to run a 10 gigabit per second network between a copper switch and a server. I guess we can assume that these are right next to each other. What is the minimum category of cable required for this task? Is it Category 3, Category 5, Category 5E, Category 6, or Category 6A? Let's see how you answered this one. If we look at the results, 50% of you, 50, right in the middle, have said Category 6 is what you would use. And then we have exactly a three-way tie for second place. It's 16% apiece between Category 5, Category 5E, Category 6A. The numbers don't lie. There they are. And then nobody, or only 2% of you, thought that it would be Category 3. You didn't know. You just chose something, right? There's always a chance. What if those folks the 2% of you are really right. Wouldn't that be a thing? Let's see if you were really right. Let's go to the chart for a 10 gigabit per second network. You first have to figure out in your mind, what is 10 gigabit with copper? So you need to understand what the standards are for Ethernet. And the standards for Ethernet are the 10G base T standard. So what you want to find is the 10G base T standard and understand for really any length of that particular standard, what can you run? Well, if you have category 6, you can run that unshielded for 55 meters, and the standard supports a shielded category 6 cable to 100 meters. So category 6 is the bare minimum to be able to run 10G base T. This is an important consideration. I see a number of people saying, how fast does category 6 go? Category 6 doesn't go anything. It's a piece of copper. It's a cable. It doesn't have a speed. The real question is, for the type of signal that you're putting on that cable, what is the category required to be able to get that signal across the network? That's the real question. And so in this case, category 6 is what we were looking for. And indeed, 52% of you did choose category 6. That is the correct answer. That's the one that we would be working through. All the other categories are certainly applied to other standards, and there are advantages to running category 6A over category 6. Category 5 and category 5E are effectively the same cable. Not even effectively. They are the same cable, so they're exactly the same in the way they operate. And then category 3, you really don't see that anymore. It's not even commonly used for really anything, because why would you sell a category 3 cable? We can just put in a category 5 and handle everything. But back in the day of slower networks and voice communication, category 3 was pretty popular. These days, everything above category 5E is popular. So you just never know what you're thinking of when you work through those. Category 5 and category 5E are identical. In fact, let's go back to that view of this. This confuses folks sometimes when they realize that a lot of people think that if you're running 1000 base T, which is gigabit Ethernet, that somehow it is only supported on category 5E. But as I just told you, a category 5 and a category 5E are identical in the way they are built. Construction-wise, it's the same cable. There's no difference between the two. The only difference is how we test it and what we decided to write on the side of the cable. They're identical. So, of course, 1000 base T or gigabit Ethernet is also supported on category 5. How do we know this? Well, because the IEEE told us. It's in the standard. They wrote it into the standard and said, yeah, Cat 5 works great for gigabit networks. 1 gig on category 5. I know you will see other places around the internet that will tell you something different, and I'm not sure why they do that. I have no idea why other places will tell you things that go contrary to the published standards from the IEEE, but they do. And at this point, I think other websites copy websites that got it wrong to begin with. So you will probably see half of the websites you'll run into will have incorrect information. So make sure, especially for your exam, that you're putting the right information down. Category 5 is if you're trying to run gigabit Ethernet or 1000 base T, the minimum category of cable required is indeed category 5, and that will work up to 100 meters. So that is an important consideration. In our case, we were interested in category 6. Category 6 was the bare minimum for the 10 gig network. That's what we were looking for. So if you answered D, you got that one absolutely correct. Well, we went kind of deep on that one, didn't we? But I think we kind of tore that one apart, kind of understand a little bit more about categories and what they do and put them in different orders. And I think it's a good place to go. If you have more questions on that, of course, this comes directly from my video on standards, on the copper cabling standards. So you're welcome to go and have a look at those standards as well. Well, that takes care of our rewind question. We now went back and looked at what we did last month and see how well we do with things this month. But now let's do all new questions. I've written a whole new set of questions just for this study group. And let's start with a performance-based question. I'll make this point because if you've never taken a CompTIA exam before, you may not realize that the first handful of questions you get on your exam will not be multiple choice questions. You know, this was a multiple choice question. It's a question and multiple choices. but the first few questions on your exam might be putting you at a command prompt and asking you to perform a function. It might be a matching question. You may have to put things in a particular order from fastest to slowest or highest to lowest. It depends on what they'll be asking of you. It may be a drag and drop question. You never know what they might ask. So if you're not ready for that, it could throw you. So make sure you know that the first handful of questions you get on your exam will be a little bit different than multiple choice questions that you may have seen. So I have for you a performance-based question of the day. I will apologize now for everybody who is on a podcast that this is more of a visual question. It's the visual Daily Double. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see that on the podcast side, but I would invite you to come look at the video replay. There's some good stuff in here, and you might be able to work through it. So here is your performance-based question of the day. Relatively straightforward. It simply says, name these interfaces. You don't generally get a fill-in-the-blank question on the exam. In fact, I don't know that I've ever seen one on the A+ exam. This is probably more of a matching question, and they would probably give you 7 or 8 options, and you'd have to fill it in for these 5 interfaces. But I have for you these 5 cables with their corresponding 5 interfaces, and I want you to tell me what these are. Now, if you think you know what they are, please do not answer in the chat room. You instead want to go to the link that's there on your page. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA to lock in your answer so that you can tell me what they are. So if you know what A, B, C, D, and or E happens to be sure to tell me just by putting in A, whatever it is, B, port 2, C, port 3, and give me what those names of those interfaces are. Now, this is one that I think you can probably even do yourself. One good way to do this is to go to the Google machine and do a Google image search. You notice when you do a search of things, it gives you the option at the top of the page to choose the search, news, images, and different options at the top. So one of the things you can do is go to Google, type in the word motherboard interfaces or back of computer or anything that makes sense. Search for that and then choose images and look at those images and see if you can recognize what every single one of those interfaces happens to be. And if you get really good at that, then you're probably ready for that part of your exam. It's an important part to know that if you're looking at the back of a server, if you're looking at somebody's workstation, if you're looking at these devices, you will absolutely have an idea of what that interface happens to be. And you should visually see it and immediately know, that's for video. This is this type of interface. That's the audio, and here's how it works. Those, I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to give interface names. So I'm talking around the question at this point. People are thinking, why doesn't he just explain what he sounds like? That's because there's a question on the screen. I'm trying to be coy and it's not working. So have a look at what those options are. Name the interfaces. I see a number of you locking in your interfaces right now. It's going to be hard to Google this one. This is an image I put together, sort of a conglomeration of different images I put together here. And of course, you shouldn't be Googling anyway. You can't Google on your exam, so don't Google on this either. Go through each interface, see if you know what this happens to be. I'm going to look at the answers on my side as you're putting them in. You folks are doing very good with this. Very, very good with this. I'm looking at some of the answers coming in, and some of you are spot on. I'm giving you a huge percentage correct on this one. So if you already put your answer in, I'll bet your answer is right. A lot of these are absolutely correct and spot on. And a lot of you, the one that I think is giving people pause is the second one, is B. And we'll talk about why that is. In fact, chat room, Jose in the chat room, he goes, B always gets me. And just as I was saying that, Mike says, I don't know about B. So B is the one, the question. And we'll talk about why B is such a funny interface for this. Not funny, haha, but curious. It's a curious interface. So that's how it works. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through each of these interfaces and see how we do. So we'll start with the very first one. This is a relatively new interface. All of these are, I think these are pretty close to being proper size, at least relative to what they are. But what's interesting about this first interface is that the name of the interface can certainly be different than what you're running on the cable plugged into this interface, because this interface is a USB-C interface. These are the, everybody wants USB-C now. It's now that we're past the days of dealing with USB. Everybody wants their phones, their tablets, their wireless headsets, their anything they charge to be USB-C interface. And why wouldn't you? It's such a small interface. You can plug it in either way. It's almost like bringing the advantages of Lightning to the rest of the world. Now, USB has finally made it through the entire committee process to finally give us a plug that we can plug in on the first try. And USB-C fits very well with that. Now, interestingly, USB-C describes the interface, this physical interface design. But you could put a lot of different signals on USB-C. You could put video signals across this. You could put DisplayPort signals on USB-C. You could put HDMI signals on USB-C. You could put serial communication, like to a console, on USB-C. USB-C is simply the description of the physical connection. What you put on that physical connection can vary widely. So if you're looking at purchasing technology or connecting to technology that has a USB-C interface, you need to ask more questions. What's on that interface? What type of signal are you transmitting over that interface? Because that may affect the type of cable that you're going to use. So pretty important. Let's look at this second one, the one we all talked about in the chat room. What the heck is B? What is this second one? And we got a number of different answers. Some people said that's a Thunderbolt interface. Some people said that's a mini DisplayPort interface. And technically, you're both correct. We really didn't come up with a good name for this interface. I think technically it's a mini DisplayPort interface, but it turns out that that's sort of like USB-C. This is more of a generic type interface that we can put many different types of signals over. So this is one that if you see it, and granted, we're seeing fewer types of this interface now that USB-C has really taken hold, but on older systems, you may absolutely find an interface that allows you to connect with video over this mini DisplayPort connection. And you can also use Thunderbolt. That's an old Thunderbolt style interface as well. It's the same interface. And depending on the technology of the system you're using, it may allow you to send Thunderbolt signals over that interface, or it may only be available to send mini DisplayPort signals over that interface. So both would be correct. It is not a mini USB interface, though. This is not USB. That is definitely a mini DisplayPort interface / Thunderbolt. These days, you don't see a lot of Thunderbolt being run, but I think I technically have some Thunderbolt devices here in the studio. In fact, I down here are some recorders. You can see the Cylons going. They are connected to my file system with Thunderbolt because I can get 20 gigabits per second out of that connection. So I can edit in real time from those Thunderbolt connected devices. That's how fast they are. So it depends on your application. Just one of those things to keep in mind. Next interface, I think 100% of you got this one absolutely correct. This next interface is a USB Type A, probably the most common. And of course, this is the interface that will only work if you try to connect to it 3 times. And then finally, on that 3rd time, it will work. First time, no. We'll turn it over. No. Turn it back over. Magically works. Don't know why that is, but that's the way it works. Maybe that was by design. We should talk to the engineers about that one. USB Type A, certainly very common. In fact, so common that I had to purchase USB-C to USB-A type cable converters today to do a particular project I'm working on. And by project, I mean a gaming system. So I had to get A connectors to somehow connect to my USB-C interfaces on a laptop that had no A connectors. So one of those things. This is USB Type A. It's probably one of the most common USBs you will find. Next on the list, the 4th one down that a number of you were thinking about, said, yep, this is Lightning. It's a Lightning connector. This is the Apple proprietary Lightning interface. In fact, I even think I have. Where's my Lightning cable? It's over here. Let me get out of, go here. Oh, there's my Lightning cable. There's always one around here somewhere because my phone uses Lightning to be able to charge. And if I need it for something, it's right there. So we're good to go. I have an iPad, the one you, oh, sorry about that. We have an iPad in front of me. Can't even see it. That iPad is one of the newer ones. It has USB-C. So it seems like I just saw the news today that was talking about the EU wanting to encourage Apple to provide USB-C on their phones so that all the phones in Europe will be exactly the same, because apparently they didn't learn the first time. So that's a very common interface to find for your phones is Lightning. That's the one that will work. And I don't know if it's probably about time that Lightning get phased out anyway. I think the EU is saying, yes, we forced Apple to change everything over. In reality, Apple says, we're already changing it over. It's already in process. In fact, you've seen, if you've been watching the iPhone rumors, some iPhones look like they will have USB-C on the next one. Maybe they won't. We'll have to find out. But it seems to be at this point a rather pointless argument. Everybody's got a Lightning cable, and if you don't, you can ask somebody next to you. Everybody's got a USB-C cable, and if you don't, it's not like it's a deal breaker. It used to be, back in the day, every different model of phone, even from the same phone manufacturer, had a different power cable. And that's, I think, what they're reacting to in the EU is the fact that they need to clamp down on that, because that was just a ridiculous money play by the phone manufacturers, because they could charge you $25 for a cable for power that you could not get anywhere else. And it wasn't just Nokia, although they were very good at it. It was everybody doing that. And so I think Lightning, USB-C, I think we're covered. I think we're good on that. I'm not sure why we still have to fight over interfaces, but there we are. There's more better things to fight over, as I like to say. You can quote me on that. DisplayPort is the last interface here. This one could almost be HDMI. Nobody fell for that, though. No HDMI there. DisplayPort was the interface here. The reason you know it was DisplayPort, well, mostly because it has this little corner chopped out of it. That really is a key tell on this particular interface. It really couldn't be anything else. In fact, that interface style, the way it's designed, the look of it is very unique. That could only be a DisplayPort interface. By the way, for those of you that have not used DisplayPort, you can almost see it here. Is that DisplayPort interface has little hooks on the top of it. These little lines that you see are little hooks. And when you plug it into the interface, it locks in place. And I mention this because I see a lot of cables that people will try to pull it. It's not coming out of the monitor. Let me just pull it harder, back up the truck, wrap the chain around it. We're going to get this out of this. They don't realize that there's a little clip right on the interface. If you just push it down, you can easily slide the connector right out of the interface. So if you have got you go to a machine, you've never worked with DisplayPort before, and somebody says, we need to swap this display out, no problem. Let me pull this the cable's not, I can't pull the cable. It's not coming out. You have to press down to unlock it. Not all DisplayPort cables are like that. 99% of them are. And it's great to have it because you know it's not going to pull out of that interface. But I've seen a lot of people damage their systems when trying to do that. The rule of thumb, when you are working with trying to remove something from your computer, whether it's an interface card, maybe you're installing something into your device, at any point where you're installing or uninstalling something, it should easily pull out of the device. There should never be a time when you have to get a crowbar to get something out of your computer. If that's what's happening, you're doing something wrong. Take a step back. Try to figure out why it's not coming out of there, because it should easily simply come out of the system without any problems whatsoever. DisplayPort can get you that way. So that's my warning sign. I've not damaged one, but I think I probably came close the first time trying to figure out what was going on. That's a challenge. But absolutely have that DisplayPort there. That's an important one. So a lot of folks in the chat room going, oh yeah, I tried the first time, had no idea that was locked in. We're just not used to it with HDMI or VGA or any of the others. VGA, I guess we have the thumb screws, right? But who uses those? The thumbs that nobody screws in the thumb screws. And if they do, for some reason, they torque it down. They might as well just put something like the red on there so it really locks in. I don't know why they do that, but that VGA is going nowhere. These are your right answers. It's USB-C, Thunderbolt. I will accept mini DisplayPort. Both of those are just as valid as the other. USB Type A, Lightning, and DisplayPort. Those are the interfaces. Hopefully you got those right. If you didn't, make sure you're familiar with those. There are a lot of interface types you need to know for the exam, and you need to know them on site. Let's do another question. Since I talk so much on this one, it's time to get this party going a little bit. Next question on our list asks, an administrator is configuring a mobile phone to send emails. Which of the following should be added to the phone configuration? Should we add radius credentials, VPN password, SSH proxy, HTTPS certificate, or SMTP host username and password? An administrator is configuring a mobile phone to send emails. Which of the following should be added to the phone configuration? Radius credentials, VPN password, SSH proxy, HTTPS certificate, or SMTP host username and password. If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's right there on your screen, and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Very, very good idea to do that. So a lot of people still using VGA in the chat room. Some of you have an adapter to convert from DisplayPort to VGA. This must be a converter, since those two formats are not compatible with each other. So it must be a converter for that one. Your vehicle scanner uses VGA. A vehicle scanner. I suspect there's a port on the side that's not VGA. I bet it is a interface for, I bet it's a 9-pin interface for serial and not the 15-pin interface for VGA. Both look very similar to each other. They're exactly the same type of connector. So they look, the size of the connector is identical on that. So absolutely one of those situations. To deal with some of the different cables and different options, you have to know all of them. And a DB9, very different than the DB15 that is used for VGA. But both are DB. Both are the DB size. Technically, it's DE size. I look forward to your cards and letters. That DE size connector that we incorrectly call DB, that's the size that's there. That's what we're doing with it. So hopefully that's one you're familiar with. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, an administrator is configuring a mobile phone to send emails. Which of the following should be added to the phone configuration? Is it radius credentials, VPN password, SSH proxy, HTTPS certificate, or SMTP host username and password? How did you answer? 92% of you must have done this before. You've been setting up your mobile phone to send emails, and you know that if you do that, you need to, at a bare minimum, configure an SMTP host, and most often that requires a username and password. That is the correct answer. If you're sending email, you will commonly be using SMTP or the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol to make that happen. This usually requires you to set up a username and password to authenticate to that mail server, because as we know, we just don't want anybody in the world being able to send emails from your email server. That would be perfect for someone trying to send spam. So SMTP is what you would be using there. That is the correct answer, and 92% of you really knew that was the case anyway. Now, HTTPS certificates are useful if you need to encrypt or provide information about the trust associated with an HTTP server or a web server. We aren't talking about web servers. We're talking about sending emails. We've got SSH proxies, which are unusual to find, but they do exist, but it's nothing you would need to be able to transfer emails. A VPN password is useful for connecting to a remote site over an encrypted tunnel, but it doesn't help you very much for sending email. And lastly, radius credentials, which are certainly good for authenticating to a centralized authentication facility, but we're way ahead of ourselves. We're just trying to send emails. And most often, if you're sending an email, you're not adding radius credentials, you're adding an SMTP host username and password. This really was the only answer that made any sense. It's the best answer you should have chosen. Definitely choose E, SMTP host, username, and password. I want to take a moment in the chat room. Sean with the $10 super chat. Sean says, I passed my A+ and Network Plus with your help, taking my Security Plus within the next 2 weeks. Thought I would pay a little for all the free teaching you've given me. Thank you. Well, thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. Of course, as I mentioned, it is certainly not required that anybody pay for any of these training. But of course, these lights and systems, they don't pay for themselves. So we have to keep everything going, and your cards, letters, suggestions, and in some cases, your contributions really do help quite a bit with that. Thank you so much, Sean, and congratulations on your A+ and your Network Plus. Best of luck with Security Plus. Avatars in the chat room also with a $10 super chat that says, thank you for your videos and practice exams / course notes. Passed both 1001 and 1002 first try using them and watching these study groups. That's the way you do it. Avatar, congratulations. Thank you for the $10 super chat, and congratulations on your A+ certification. That's just a great story. I like to hear those. If you pass, I love to get an email and anything from you that says, yep, I passed. I just like to see it. I just like to know that that's what motivates me during the day and keeps things going, is exactly that. So fantastic. Thank you for that, for both of those super chats. Let's do another question. Let's see if I can get one that might take the difficulty level up just a little bit. This question asks, an Ethernet cable on an RJ45 has been inadvertently cut from the end of the cable. Which of the following should be used to replace this connector? Let me see if I can decipher this well-written out question for you. An Ethernet cable with an RJ45 connector on the end of it has been inadvertently cut from the end of the cable. I don't know what I was thinking. Which of the following should be used to replace this connector? Should you use a punch-down tool, a crimper, a tone generator, a loopback plug, or a cable tester? Those are your 5 options. You have an Ethernet cable. The RJ45 on it has been inadvertently cut from the end of the cable. Which of the following should be used to replace this connector? Is it punch-down tool, crimper, tone generator, loopback plug, or cable tester? If you think you know the answer, use that link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. They'll just disappear anyway. There's really nothing you can do about that. They will just go away. A lot of this content does look similar to Network Plus because there is an entire domain of the A+ exam dedicated to networking. And we are stepping through each one of these domains. We're now up to domain 3, I believe. So domain 3, which deals specifically with using these tools and things for working with networks. Maybe this is the domain 2. We'll have to see. We'll see in a moment what it happens to be. Let me see. It might be domain 1. I think it's 3, though. We'll see in the next screen we get. It'll tell you exactly what the number is. It's always at the bottom of the screen. You can always see on the explanation slide where that come from. You'll see exactly where I pulled all of that information. And usually it comes directly from a video, which just makes it easy for everyone. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, an Ethernet cable on an RJ45 has been inadvertently cut from the end of the cable. Which of the following should be used to replace this connector? Is it punch-down tool, crimper, tone generator, loopback plug, or cable tester? You said 81% of you say crimper. Still a very large number. Not quite as many people as sure about this one as the last question, though. The last one is the next answer down is punch-down tool with 13% of the answers. We also have 4% with loopback plug. We have 2% with cable tester, and 0% say tone generator. Nobody said tone generator. That seemed like an obvious one, didn't it? No, it did not. If you lose a connector on the end of your RJ45 cable, you're going to need another RJ45. And the only way to get that RJ45 connector put back on, well, not back on, but to get a new one on the end of the cable, we'll need some cable crimpers. That's exactly what we would use. This allows you to put the modular connector into the crimper. You put your cable, the end of the cable without the connector in there, and it will crimp a new connector right to the end of it. Very useful to have. It pushes the little metal prongs right into the insulation, and you're able to get access to all of this signal on that cable. Cable crimpers is the right answer for that. Does put the new one. Everybody follow along now. You got a connector. There it is. Hasn't been put onto the cable yet. You put it on the end of the cable, you use the crimper, and now it's connected. That's how it works. This is one. It always, once you have the old one though, and it's cut off, you can't do anything with the old one. It's already been crimped. It's already been pushed down. You got to cut it off and put a new one on the end of it. So very useful to have. These are, now I don't use those pass-through ends. That is an actual real connector on here. Although the pass-through ones look to be reasonable. I think they're a little more expensive. I imagine they're much easier to use. I haven't used them very much. I've watched others use them to have that there, but it's pretty useful to have that connector. And if you're doing a good crimp, that's what it should look like right there. Have it there. If you're ever working through and trying to figure out the right answers with these, sometimes it does help to know what the wrong answers are. In this case, crimper was the right answer. We had others there as well. For instance, a punch-down tool. 12% of you chose punch-down tool. If you were reconnecting this to a punch-down block, to a 110 block, to a 66 block, to one of those other types of punch-down blocks, then a punch-down tool would make more sense. But here we were trying to replace specifically an RJ45 connector. Therefore, we're going to need to use a crimper. 4% said loopback plug. And although we do need a plug, we don't need to loop it back into ourselves. We would only use a loopback plug if we were trying to troubleshoot hardware or determine if a particular interface was working properly. A loopback plug will not help you if you need to get an RJ45 connector onto the end of a cable. So that's not one you would use either. 2% said cable tester. You would do that after you put the connector on, though. Cable tester will not fit a RJ45 connector onto the cable for you. The cable tester is what you would use after you've put the RJ45 connector on, so that you'll know just how badly you did the crimping. I speak from experience. And lastly, tone generator. Nobody chose that, but that's used to find the end of a cable, especially in a big, large bunch of cables. So that is what you would use. A crimper. 82% of you chose crimper, and that is absolutely the right answer. Well, as you can already tell, the Core 1 exam is full of information. There are, if you look at all of my A+ videos for my 1000 series course, 137 videos over 18 hours. There's a lot of data in there. And that's why for those, I've created a set of course notes. There's not only a Core 1, there's the Core 1 course notes. There are also 1101, so 1001 and 1101 course notes. They're slightly different than each other, but the newer ones are for the newer exam. I don't have those up on the screen, but they're certainly there. You've got a lot to choose from with these. I have a copy of these course notes up just so you can get a feel for what they look like. Here's a couple pages from the course notes. You can really see the hooks in the DisplayPort connector there, can't you? Those are on the screen. There's some more connectors there. So these course notes have all of the text, all of the important images, all of the graphics I created, everything that's in there. I really do put them into this mix. So you're able to get access to all of those. Not only is there the digital edition that you just saw right there. Nope, not right there, but right on your screen. If I showed the right thing on my screen, you'd see the right thing on your screen. Those are the digital connection or digital edition or the physical edition, which is identical in scope and structure. It has exactly the same information inside of it, but it's printed on this bunch of dead trees that I have here. So some people like to have those printed versions. I can absolutely ship that to you, and you can decide which one you'd like. If you get the digital edition, or if you get the physical edition, I give you a copy of the digital edition for free. So you have something to look through while you're waiting for that shipment to arrive at your home. It's a great way to do it. So hopefully you're familiar with the course notes. You can find out more about it at professormesser.com/1001 notes. And if you follow the links on my site, you can find the 1001 or 1101 notes. These are brand new. My entire 1101 course is now available on my website. And of course, I have course notes to go along with all of those as well. Always available. Find that at professormesser.com. Let's do more questions. The next question on our list asks, simple question. It simply asks, which of the following maintains an exact duplicate of all user data? Is it RAID 0, RAID 1, JBOD, RAID 5, or RAID 1 plus 0? All real things, all directly from your exam objectives. Which of the following maintains an exact duplicate of all user data? Is it RAID 0, RAID 1, JBOD, RAID 5, or RAID 1 plus 0. If you think you know the answer, lock it in at professormesser.com/QA and get your answer in there right now. There had to be a RAID question, right? We have to have a RAID question in there somewhere, and that's where we put it. It's right there in the midst of all of that. Now, if you have, I will tell you, I just showed in the chat room, people are talking about this, and I just showed these two course notes. One is for the 220-1001. One is for the 220-1101. These are two different exams that you could take right now. Although they look similar, they contain different information. So if you're taking the 1101 exam, you should study from 1101 videos, course notes, and other materials. If you're taking the 1001, you should only study from materials that say 1001. Do not study from the 1101 and go take the 1001 exam. You're setting yourself up for failure. So don't do that. So always study from materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. That is your best strategy. It is the highest percentage pass you're going to find. Why would you study from materials made for something else? That doesn't even make sense. Well, I went to take my history exam, but I stayed up all night studying physics. So I'm sure I'm going to do fine on my history exam. That's literally what you're doing. Don't do that. Always make sure your exam materials match the version that you are taking. It is incredibly important. You have a very good chance of failing if you don't. So that's what you want to do. You always study from materials that match the version of the exam that you are taking. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of the following maintains an exact duplicate of all user data? Is it RAID 0, RAID 1, JBOD, RAID 5, or RAID 1 plus 0? We're getting less sure of our answers as we go through this study group. RAID 1, 65% of you chose RAID 1. Certainly a majority. If we had to choose over any of the others, I think we'd choose that one. 12% of you said RAID 5. 10% said RAID 0. Effectively a kind of a three-way tie for second if you include RAID 1 plus 0 at 9%. So all of those are relatively close to each other. And then JBOD, only 4% chose JBOD. So you've got some options there to work through. The one we were looking for, the RAID version that maintains an exact duplicate of data on the drives, effectively writes everything twice. That is how it keeps everything redundant. That's how I often think of redundancy as having an exact duplicate. And it is RAID 1 that provides that exact duplicate to the point that we call RAID 1 mirroring. Mirroring. Say that on a live stream. Mirroring. It is a mirror of the materials on one drive are an exact duplicate, a mirror, a duplication, an exact copy onto the second drive. Or if you have multiple drives, they are copied across all of the drives for all of those. That is a perfect way to set up redundancy. It works phenomenally for this. The whole problem you have with RAID 1, though, is you effectively, if you want to store 1 terabyte of data, you need to buy and install 2 terabytes of storage drive. So you are using a lot of storage drive as the duplicate. We changed that around a bit with RAID 5. We get some efficiencies out of the space with RAID 5. But even though we are spending a little more money and copying everything to both of these drives simultaneously, very effective. A great way to have redundancy. I've told the story before how I walked into a client and we were doing an upgrade to their server and we realized the server lost a drive months ago. The server was running RAID 1, but one of the drives failed months ago. Nobody knew it. Nobody was monitoring it. Nobody had any idea. The users just kept running day to day. They were fine. They had no idea there was a problem because they were running a mirrored environment with RAID 1. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. We removed the bad drive. We put in a new drive. The RAID array copied all of the data to the new drive, and we were back up and being redundant again on these systems. But what a good example of how solid and how powerful RAID is that nobody even knew there was a complete failure of an entire drive because we were doing RAID 1. Very useful to have. So absolutely what you should be doing. RAID 1 was the right answer. And if you chose RAID 1, 67% of you did choose RAID 1 and got that one absolutely right. Now, RAID 0 is taking data and striping the data to multiple drives. So you put a little bit of data on one drive, a little bit of data on another drive, and a little bit of data on a third drive, and so on. Now, if you lose any of those drives, you've now lost some of the data. You've now broken your array. You now no longer have access to any data. So RAID 0, we often say, has zero redundancy. Even though it is RAID, the redundant array of independent disks, or inexpensive, depending on how old you are, RAID 0 has zero redundancy. So that's what we would choose. Or RAID 5 has the ability to store data on multiple drives, but then store parity data so that if we lose a drive, we can reconstruct what we lost, effectively rebuilding, a very efficient way to maintain redundancy, and we don't have to have as much drive space available as we do with RAID 1. And RAID 1 plus 0 is a combination of kind of doing RAID 0 plus some mirroring. You can think of it that way. What if we did RAID 0 and we had some of this information across drives, but we mirrored the information that was being striped? That's how the way we do it. RAID 1 plus 0 is the way to do it. And JBOD is just a bunch of disks. That's all it is. That's literally what JBOD is. JBOD is you put a bunch of drives in a machine and you just access the drives independently. There is no coordination between these drives. There is no redundancy between the drives. They don't work together. They are just independent physical drives. So that's the way to do it. The idea of RAID 5, by the way, in the chat room's talking about this a bit, is the idea of parity somehow allowing you to recover data. And if you go to the video I have on parity, specifically the one on memory parity, where I talk about using multi-channel memory, ECC memory, parity memory, I go through an exercise where we calculate parity, and then we figure out if the calculation that on a second page, the calculations that are there are the ones that work to recreate the data. And we effectively recreate the data in the video. So it explains that pretty well. I would recommend finding that. And if you have problems finding it, send me an email. I'll send you the link to that. No problem. Make that happen. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you are here. The way that you can receive that email is to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, there's a form that will pop up. Put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put June 2022, Core 1, and then put the super secret code word of the month, JBOD. Haven't used that one before. JBOD is the super secret code word of the month. There it is right there. That's the word you want to put in the subject line so I can find it, or at the very least, put it on a line by itself in the body of the message. You can also put anything else you would like in the body of the message. I do read through all of those. So absolutely something you might want to do if you'd like to receive an email from me. Usually it takes me about a week or so to return these, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. But we do get this over to you, and you'll be able to at least prove, if you're audited, that you did receive a webinar category CEU. Absolutely there, something you can work through. Very quickly in the chat room, I want to thank Eric in the chat room with a $4.99 super chat. Eric says, I'm working. I want to thank you for your amazing materials and discounts. You're absolutely welcome. Happy that you were able to take advantage of those. Hopefully you were able to get information you either needed for certification or just to further your knowledge in IT. Not everybody coming to my site takes their A+ exam. Sometimes they're just trying to find more information that will help them with their current job or help them get a better job even without having a certification. So thanks, Eric. I appreciate that super chat. Also want to thank Callie in the chat room, the $3.50 super chat. No message, just contributing, just being part of the goodness on the website and making these lights stay on and keeping us going every day. Thank you, Callie, for that. We sure appreciate it. We anytime that anybody sends anything through, whether it's contributions or thanks or whatever, we take all of that and really use that as motivation to keep making more content, which is what we are doing right now, every moment of every day. We can talk more about that in the after show. to make that happen. Let's do another question, though. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's fit another one in here because I've been talking a lot in the study group. So let's do one more question. Do I have one? Yes, I do. Here is the question. It asks, an administrator needs to modify the available memory and storage space available in a virtual machine. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it NAT, rapid elasticity, VDI, hypervisor, or UEFI BIOS? An administrator needs to modify the available memory and storage space available in a virtual machine. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it NAT, rapid elasticity, VDI, hypervisor, or UEFI BIOS? If you think you know the answer, lock it in at that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and see if you happen to know what that answer is. Please do not put an answer in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. The format I'd like on the CEU email, there's no special format. It's you put your name, you put your email address in the subject line. I need to see where it came from. This would be June 2022 study group. Sometimes I just get an email with a word, JBOD. That's it. That's all they give me. And I'll have to figure out, where did that come from? Now I have a process behind the scenes that helps me find these things fast. But it's better if there's more data there that I can reference. Sometimes searching for a word, and sometimes I'll use a word in multiple study groups, one from this year and one from 2 years ago. And I won't know which one somebody uses unless they tell me which one it came from. Not that I think it matters that much, but I would like it to be accurate on the email that I send to you. So that's what I come from. That's where that break it down. Now, if you have other questions that are outside the scope of what we're doing now, make sure you hold those for the after show. We're going to start that in just a few minutes, and I'll be able to answer any questions you have in the chat room. How many of these study groups will I be doing? Since they've upgraded the exam to 1101, we'll talk about that in the after show because I've been thinking about that too in the after show. How many more of these 1101s we'll be doing when we have 3.5 years of 1101 study groups in the archives? Does it make sense to? I'm now already announcing it seems, of what we're doing. We'll talk more about specifics in the after show because I do have a thought process I go through. Let's see how you did with this question that asked, an administrator needs to modify the available memory and storage space available in a virtual machine. Which of the following provides this functionality? Is it NAT, rapid elasticity, VDI, hypervisor, or UEFI BIOS? How'd you answer? Let's see. 58%, you guys did really well this month, said hypervisor. We got a two-way tie for second place with rapid elasticity and VDI at 19 and 18% respectively. And then you have 6% that said UEFI BIOS and 1% said network address translation. Well, with 57% saying hypervisor, we kind of have to go with that. It's a virtual machine manager. It's the hypervisor. It's the thing that manages all of the virtual machines. There has to be something in charge. And in most cases, that thing in charge is what we call a hypervisor. The hypervisor allows you to configure all of the different settings inside of a virtual machine. What type of video is it using? How much memory is assigned to that machine? How much storage space does it have? How much CPU is it planning to use? All of these things are managed, and more is managed from that hypervisor. This is the place you would go to make any changes to your virtual machines. And so this is the perfect answer to an administrator that needs to modify how much memory and how much storage space might be in a VM. You would use a hypervisor. Answer D, 57% of you got that right. Now, 17% or 19% said rapid elasticity. Rapid elasticity is something that is very good at creating new application instances out of thin air. Suddenly, the website gets very busy. We're going to need a whole new website. But websites are web servers, database servers. Maybe there's a caching server. There's a lot there to be able to work through. So absolutely, you would want to do that as well. You're going to work through all of the content inside of an entire application instance and roll out that new content. You would do that by using a sort of a format within cloud computing called rapid elasticity. But rapid elasticity doesn't help you modify the information in a current VM. That's not what that particular technique does. That's one we would use to either roll out or tear down existing application instances. So not our right answer, not the one we were looking for. VDI, the virtual desktop interface, can be a cloud-based application. We could also run it internally within our own environment. Normally you see desktop as a service is how it's implemented in the cloud, but that is not something that is used to increase or change the memory or storage space in a VM. That provides you with a way to have a desktop that you can use from wherever you happen to be in the world, very commonly cloud-based, but it can be your own servers as well. UEFI BIOS allows you to make configurations to the machine, the physical machine you're on, but that's not where you would make changes to a virtual machine. And lastly, the NAT, the Network Address Translation, that is used to change IP addresses and port numbers associated with network communication. That also has nothing to do with the memory or storage space in a virtual machine. The only answer here that makes any sense, the one that is the right answer, is D, hypervisor. 57% of you got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer. That's the one we were looking for. Well, as you could tell as we step through these questions in this study group, that there is a lot to pull from. One of the things I found online is that the questions you will find out in the rest of the internet may not be the highest quality. I'm being very polite when I mention that. Some of the questions I found on the internet have just been awful. They don't prepare you for the way the exam asks questions. The answers they choose are odd and in some cases conflict with each other. There may be multiple answers that could technically be correct, but no way to differentiate. And some are just wrong. They'll just tell you what the answer is, and it's not even the right answer. That is what drove me to write my own set of practice questions. And this is my Core 1 A+ practice exams for the 220-1001. This is a big book. I think I have the physical book right here. Here it is. It's a thick book. I mean, there's a lot of questions in here, 370 pages, 3 full exams, 3 full 90-question exams. It has both multiple choice and performance-based questions inside of it. There is a PDF version of this available, or you can get the physical version and read through it because we publish it as a PDF, so you can use this anywhere. You don't have to be connected to the internet. You can run it on any platform you happen to have. It works everywhere and on everything. Let me give you an idea what this looks like. I've got a copy of this up right here. Here's a copy. Here's the digital version, the PDF version. And because it's a PDF, if your PDF reader allows you to annotate, you could choose different annotations on here. Let's step through a question I have here. It says, the printer in the accounting department has stopped all printing processes. The print queue shows there are 7 jobs in the queue that are waiting to be printed. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Should you send a test job to the printer and move it to the top of the queue? Should you restart the printer's spooler? Should you install an updated version of the printer driver? Or should you delete everything in the queue and resend the print jobs? Well, it's a PDF, so if you wanted to annotate the PDF yourself, you certainly could. You can make changes to this. If you're on a tablet, usually you have a pen or a stylus. Use your finger, be able to work through it there. There's lots of things you can do to work through the answers. But if you have this PDF in front of you, notice that you can go to a quick answer on page 31. That will just tell you whether it's A, B, C, D, or whatever it happens to be. You've also got an option here to go to the details. These are hot links. This is on page 39, but instead of scrolling back to page 39, we'll just click the details and have it go to page 39, except I've now locked it up because I've now spent way more time on this than I should have done. This details view of this, by the way, and the QR code takes you right to this, is on these pages that you work through. There's not only the answer on the page, but the answer and explanation for the wrong answers on this page. And I think that's an important part of this too, is that you're not just finding out, did I get the answer right? You're also finding out, did I get the answer right? And if I didn't, why didn't I get the answer right? So you'll see an answer for answer B, restart the printer spooler, and it tells you why that particular spooler session is set up. But what if you answered one of the others, like A, C, or D? I'll explain to you why we did that. So you've got that absolutely in this list of these. The other option you have down at the bottom, if you have no idea what I'm even talking about, you can see that this question came from the 221001 Objective 5.6, which is troubleshooting printers. You can either follow this link to go to that video, or you can, if you have the physical book, you can use your phone and point at the QR code and jump right to the video to learn more about what they were really asking on the website. If you want to know more about getting this, either in the digital or physical edition, you can either buy them separately on my website at professormesser.com/core1pe, or you can buy them with all of the bundles. We have course notes bundles, practice exam bundles, success bundles. When you buy them in a bundle, you can get a little bit of a break off the price. So those are on my website. If you buy it by itself, there's a $25 for the digital edition and other pricing for the physical edition. And remember, you get the digital every time you buy the physical along with that. Those are my practice exams, and we do like them quite a bit. Now, all of the questions we went through today came from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you have not downloaded these objectives, make sure you do that today. This should be the first thing you go through when you start your studies. It should also be the last thing you go through before you go into your exam. It's free. It's on the CompTIA website. It tells you everything you need to know to pass this exam. That's how important this document is. Find it at professormesser.com/objectives. There's a link that will take you over to the CompTIA website, or you can just type into your favorite search engine, CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take in, they'll be able to find it from there as well. Probably the first link that comes up will be that link. An incredibly valuable document. Make sure you look through that and use that as your checklist. We do one of these study groups every month. We do them for both the Core 1 and Core 2 exams. Come on back Thursday. That's 2 days from now on June the 9th. We have the Core 2 study group. And then next month on July 12th and July 14th, we skip that first month of July because it is July 4th week and nobody wants to go to a live stream then. So we'll do it the next week on the 12th and the 14th. We like to do these every month. And this is another opportunity for us to sit down and go through some of the topics. Now, the question is, will next month be 1001 or 1101? I think I know. We'll talk more about that in the after show. That's right. That's what's next is the after show. Stick around for that. Instead of me asking you questions, you can ask me questions with these. So have a look at what's available in the after show. Stick around. All you have to do is just stay where you are. There's nothing you have to do. This will automatically transition over into the after show in just a moment. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers. Save a lot of money just by going to my website. Instead of paying full price, you go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only get your voucher, but also get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook, which could also help you on your exam. I want to give you every possible chance to do well in this exam, and that might help you as well. Have a look at my course notes and practice exams. Now, I will tell you that for the 1001, we have course notes and practice exams. For the 1101, we got course notes right now. Practice exams are coming, I don't know, in the coming weeks. We'll say it that way. It's coming soon, as they say, but not that soon. Maybe soon. We'll have to see. We'll see how it goes. And, of course, don't forget to follow us every day. We have pop quizzes on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm putting out all kinds of A-plus videos right now. You can find all of those on my site at professormesser.com/Twitter. Well, that brings us to the end of the formal me asking you a question part of the study group. Stick around for the after show, and I would love to talk to you about any questions that you might have. You're already putting a lot of good stuff in there. We'll go through all of that. Thanks for joining us. We love doing these live streams. We're so glad you were able to join us. We'll see you next time on the A-plus study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's see if I can get a live stream going here. I need to change a couple of things that are here on my side so that you can find the things you are looking for. And then I'll address some of the questions that you have been putting in. If you are watching this video on YouTube, there's a chat that's there. That chat is the one I'm looking at. If you're watching on my website at professormesser.com/live, there's a chat embedded onto the page. It's the same chat. So the YouTube chat is embedded there. So that's the one I am looking at. And we can step through a number of these. So if you get the success bundle, do you get both the 1001 and 1002, or are they separate? I keep them separate. Some people are concentrating on one exam or the other. So those are two separate success bundles. But if you were to say, I'll purchase the first one, during the purchase process, you will get a prompt to purchase the second one at a greatly reduced cost. Because I figure if you're getting the first one, you probably are going to need the other one as well. But not everybody does. So you have the option. And if you buy them together, there's a nice discount associated with that. It's like a $50 discount. So it's a pretty good discount. Maybe that's too aggressive. Am I discounting too much? But that's what it is. So we're just leaving it that way for now. But that's how you would do it. So there are some benefits to buying them together. And if you're trying to figure it out, you have questions about it, just send me a link through the Contact Us link or hit me on Discord and we can figure out what's going on. I'll be glad to step through that for those. Other questions in the chat room. It seems that the exam objectives for the 1101 and 1001 are the same. Oh, they are similar, but they are in no way the same. They are definitely not the same. Let me give you an overview of what I mean by that. I'm going to go to my 1101 objectives and give you a summary of what I mean by that. I don't want you to be fooled by this, because this is really an important thing when you are doing your studies, that you use the right study materials. And if I agree, if you look at the 1001 and the 1101, you just sort of go through it like, oh, these are the same. There's nothing different here. They look so similar to each other, but in fact, they are very different from each other. Let me show you how. Let's bring it up. Here is a spreadsheet I created of the 220 1101 exam objectives. For those of you wondering what I do when I'm not doing a live stream, this is what I do. So I make spreadsheets. This is mine. What I did was write down all of the exam objectives into the spreadsheet. And for every objective, I went back to see if that objective was covered in the 220 1001. And if it was covered in the 220 1001, I put down which section of the 220 1001 it's covered in. If it is not in the 220 1001, it gets a little yellow mark here saying that that is new. So as I make my new videos, I have to make sure that I add new information for every single one of those yellow options. Well, as I scroll down, you'll see more and more new. So you see a lot of green, which means that's exactly the same, but you see a lot of new. And it's not really exactly the same. A lot of even the green stuff has been updated on my videos. But there's quite a bit of yellow there, which is why I tell you, you do not want to be in a position of studying from old materials. What's interesting is the number of objectives on the 220 1001 has decreased. So this is, I think, a question or a problem people have brought up quite a bit on the exam, is they feel that there's too much information. There's so many things you have to memorize. There is so much detail on these exams that it's almost overwhelming. I think, without knowing specifically the process they went through, it appears that CompTIA has been listening to you and has said, okay, we're going to shrink down how much you have to know on the 1101 to the point that it's 173 fewer exam objectives on the 1101. Okay, it's a smaller exam. However, on this slightly smaller exam, because there's still 392 objectives, 109 of them are brand new, which means 27.81%, because it's important to do that to the 100th value. 27.81% of the content on this exam is new. So practically 30% of this exam are things that are not in your 1001 book. That's why I tell you, if you're studying the 1001 book and you're planning to go in and take the 1101 exam, if you want to spell it out, your best you can do is a 70% without guessing. And that's not really great. You really want the best you could do to be 100%, don't you? So make sure you study from materials that are from that exam. Pretty important. Pretty important. That's how important it is. 30% important. So I always say that that's really, really critical for these exams. That's the big difference. And that's just looking at one of these. The 1102 is 40% different. 40. So pretty big difference between all of those. And that's why I tell you to always make sure you're studying from the right materials. Now, what's good on my site right now, I can tell you that there is an entire course available to you that's for the 1001. But also this week, I completed the 1101 course. So there's an entire course available for the 1101. It is 68 videos, 9 hours and 36 minutes of content just for the 1101. It's a lot there. Interestingly, they shrunk down the size of the exam, but I ended up having about as many videos. It's interesting the way that worked out. But that's where I tell people, make sure you go look at that. But that sort of brings up the point of these study groups, is that at some time over the next month or two, we've got a challenge, because it's June right now. It's the beginning of June. The exams for the 1001 and 1002 will retire on October the 20th. So you've got July, August, September, October. You got about 4.5 months now, a little bit over that, to complete both of those exams. That's absolutely doable, but it is right at the edge of probably where you would want to force this down, because it usually takes about 2, in some cases 3 months to finish a single exam. And if you'd use 3 months on both of those, you're out of time. You're not going to have enough time there. So if you're already working on this for the A+, keep working and go through both of these exams, get them both done before October 20th, and you're A+ certified and you're done. The 1101, though, this might be a time to start thinking about, if you're starting new with this process, maybe the 1101 makes sense, because now there's a video course available. There's an increasing number of books, but still not a lot of books available on the market. If you go to Amazon, there's not a lot of 1101 books, at least not relative to what's available for the 1001. That's your biggest challenge, is study materials. But over the next month or two, I noticed the dates tell us that we're expecting to see books come from the publishers. So I think as you get into the studies, and since you don't have an October 20th drop dead date, you got a little more flexibility. And of course, all the CompTIA books are available. The CompTIA Labs, the CompTIA Practice Exams, the CompTIA Everything is out there. It's on my website under recommended study materials. They're all available. So it's not that nothing is available. It's just relative to the existing older exam, there's a lot less available. So you should make a decision about that, which kind of brings me to the decision process I was thinking about when I was putting this together for this live stream, that I think next month, we're probably going to transition this into an 1101 live stream. We're probably going to move it, because you've got 3.5 years of 1001 content that you can pull from. So for those of you that have just started your studies, or you want to get through the 1001 before it retires, I have 24, 36, maybe 40 videos of live streams that are available on my website. All the archives are there. So you're not missing anything. In fact, you've got plenty to pull from. I think it's probably about time to make that transition. So the next time you see this next month, I will probably specifically mark it as 1101, because it's probably the time for that. That's one of those to get into this. I think that'd be a pretty good one to do too. And I think a lot of you are working on the 1101. I think a lot of you would like to do an 1101 live stream. So I think it's about time to make that transition. So I haven't locked that in. I haven't specifically written it for next month, but I think that's probably what it's going to be. You get to now make a decision on what makes sense for you. Do you go with the 1001 or do you go with the 1101? Do you go with the 1002 or the 1102? You have to make that decision. It's really about what materials you have available to you and how much time you have and how long you think it will take you. I'm the kind of person, I don't do well with deadlines. I'm awful with deadlines. I hate deadlines. I don't hate deadlines. I hate arbitrary deadlines. But this CompTIA one is not an arbitrary deadline. That's when it stops, is October the 20th. So you have to make the decision, am I going to be able to get this done by October the 20th? If I was just starting this process and I know about how I study, it takes me a long time to study for a single exam, I would probably look at the time frames and think, I could go either way with this, but I'd probably go 1101 because I know I don't have this drop dead date of October the 20th. And for me and the way that I work, that makes me happy. Other people, though, like having the deadline. It motivates them. It gets them going. It gives them a purpose. It gives them a reason for studying. It forces them to get this done. And I will tell you, there will be people taking these exams on the final day. There will be a lot of people taking these exams on the final day because they push themselves to get to that date. You may be that kind of person. And if you are, maybe the 1001 and 1002 works for you. It's completely up to you. Now, the good part about this is, let's say the worst case scenario. You go through all of this. You have passed one of the exams. You're trying to pass the second one before it gets retired, and you aren't able to do it, and the exam series retires. Now you've got to start over again. So you've effectively lost 2 vouchers because you passed the first one, you failed the second one. Maybe you didn't take the second one, so maybe you only lost 1 voucher. But the things from the 1001 and 1002, if you don't get your A+, those get thrown out. The slate is wiped clean. So you now have to start over. And you have to go with the 1101 and 1102. Now, what's good, if there is a good side to that, I hate losing money, but if there's some silver lining, it's that the 1001 and 1002 are still very similar to the old version. The 1101 has 70% of the content that you've already learned. The 1102 has 60% of the content you've already learned. So that's up to you. You get to make that decision. One of those will fit best with you. One of those will make more sense for you. You'll know it when you make the decision. Like, oh, I think that's the better choice for me. And then you just go with that. I think that's a good way to do it. Other questions from the chat room. Let's scroll up a little bit because I've been talking, and a lot of things just went right by. Will I ever, I put the ever in there, expand the voucher usage for international students? I would like to. It's a bit of a challenge. International taxing, revenue recognition, legal laws, all of the things revolving around taxes are challenging enough for just one country. Now do all of them. And you can start imagining the complexities associated with that. I want to be able to do it, but there's also a number of things I would have to put in place to make that happen. I haven't found a good way to do it yet. And I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do this. But right now, it's just the U.S., Canada, and some U.S. territories. Right now, I just don't have anything available for other parts of the world. It's not that I don't want to. It's just right now I don't have a way to do it. And hopefully I'll be able to figure that out as time goes on. But currently, unfortunately, no. This is the only way to do it. It's vouchers for U.S. and Canada, and I apologize. I'm so sorry. What day of the week do I offer these live study groups and times? Right now. They're always on Eastern time, 12 noon, generally. Almost always. And for A+, they're usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, either the first or second Tuesday and Thursday of the month. And for Network Plus and Security Plus, they're usually on a Wednesday, usually the second or third Wednesday for Network Plus, or the third or fourth one for Security Plus. That none of that makes any sense for me saying it. The best thing you can do is go to professormesser.com/calendar or click the calendar link that's at the top of my page, and everything is in there. You can find all the calendar information. And if I ever change it, because sometimes I do, sometimes chaos ensues, something happens in my world, and I have to change it to a different day, sometimes a different time, but usually I'm just changing it to a different day. So just keep checking into the calendar. It always has the most updated information regarding live study groups. That way I can keep track of it, you can keep track of it, and you know immediately when I make a change because it's always posted there. You get no way to do it. This has already been answered in the chat room, but I'll bring it up because it's a great question from Lily that says, how can one get more experience to get a job if we're employed elsewhere during the day, or even just getting a job in IT with no experience? There are a number of challenges with this. It's such a long and involved explanation of the details of how things you could do to get a job in IT with no experience that I just made a video on it. And as I put down the video, I thought, well, this will be a quick 5-minute video. 30 minutes. It's a 30-minute video. And I realize this is YouTube. It is the theater of short attention spans. I get it. But it is chock full. There's no filler in that 30 minutes. It is going through 4 different elements that you need to get the best possible chance of getting a job in IT, which includes formal education, certifications, some practical experience, and you know someone who already works there. So there's your preview. The link to that video is in the YouTube video description of this video. It's always in there. So you can scroll down and find the link to how to get a job in IT with no experience that is on my channel. That's really my best answer for you because there's a lot. There is plenty of information in there. And just put it at 1.5 times your speed. So now you shrunk it down to what? What is that? 20 minutes? Do I have to do the math? Is it 17.5 minutes? How does that? Is it 22.5? See, this is the problem we have. This is why I do 7-second subnetting, by the way, because if you ask me to calculate math on the fly in a live stream in front of a bunch of strangers, it's wrong every time, which is why I needed those charts. People make fun of my charts all the time. They send me messages that say, well, this is stupid. You can just calculate it. Only a dummy would use this. And I have to reply back and go, I wrote this because I'm a dummy. That's why I made that, because I can't do it. So if you're able to do it, to me, you're working magic. To me, you are a wizard. You've been 23.5 minutes. I was close, right? I was very close. So for me, I had to have the tables. That's why I created those tables. That's not something you have to worry about for the A+. That's Network Plus. But that's why I created the 7-second subnetting. Subnet with no math. That's what it should be called. That's what I should have called it. And then I'd have 1 million views. If I put a cat in there, if I put a kitten or a puppy. I rethink this all the time. It should have just been a puppy channel and we'd be good. But here we are. This is one where if I'm working through at least trying to figure out the best way to make this work, I always tell people study towards the exam objectives. So that's the best thing I can also recommend for those of you planning to take the exam is get those exam objectives. Other questions in the chat room. So I guess this is specifically to BPL, broadband over power lines, which was such a bad idea, continues to be a bad idea. An awful way to do networking. It's almost like we're going to allow you to commute, but on your commute, you have to now listen to music at a very high decibel, and we get to decide what the music is. That's broadband over power lines. It is a technology that never really worked well. It created enormous conflicts with other services, specifically spectrum-based services like amateur radio and emergency services. It's an awful way to communicate. We never designed power lines to do networking, which is why you don't see ISPs running a lot of BPL out there. It has to be a very specific broadband over power line, or within your own home, there are power line network devices you can get. Even those are problematic. But that is one of those examples. The question, though, which I thought was interesting, we'll break it down. Why do I need an ISP if the internet connection runs over the power line? There you go. It's on the power line. Power lines are everywhere. I got a power line coming into my house. Why do I have to pay someone to put internet on the power line? There's 10 ISPs in the local region. Why can't I just buy a router, configure it, and have internet? Well, somebody has to set up the internet link, and those aren't cheap. So your internet service provider has extensive infrastructure. They have, in some cases, either hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of equipment that allows that connection to the internet, because at their side, it's scale. You know, at your side, it's just a router. Just plug in a router. You got internet. Done. That's so simple. On their side, you have thousands of people communicating into that connection simultaneously, doing all kinds of crazy things on the internet. How do you manage something like that across thousands or even hundreds of thousands of customers? That's a challenge. And imagine someone like Comcast or your service provider is your cable company. A national cable company has millions of customers. How do you scale for that? Well, it's more than $1 million they're spending. Many more than $1 million, tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds, to make all of that operate properly. That's the challenge, and that's why you have to pay for it. So I'm so sorry that now there's places like there are some municipalities that have their own internet where they have programs where they may be able to provide you with internet for no cost if you're in a position where you're not able to pay for it, which I think is a great idea. I think everybody should have access to the internet. I think it is a game changer. It is the great equalizer. Connectivity to the internet can change people's lives. And there should be programs in place to give people access to this data. People will line up at my local library just to get in when the doors open so they can sit down and have access to the internet. That's how important that particular resource is. Everybody should just have this at home. The problem, of course, is that all of this costs money. So there has to be some way to take money from third parties, from taxes, from some method. We all have to come up with how that works, and usually it's done locally. We talk to our local municipality and we say, we want to do this project. Here's where this money will come from. We get people to agree with that. You go through the normal governmental process to make that happen. That is why we have a cost associated with that, because it is expensive. The costs are much lower than they have been in the past. The costs keep coming down, but there's still a cost. And so I would love to, and secondly, the whole idea of broadband over power lines is an awful idea. It's never worked right. They've never been able to get it to not interfere with everything else. That is not any form of internet connectivity that anyone should be using. I think this will probably take care of itself. The advent of 5G is going to bring remarkable speeds to our mobile phones, and subsequently, you get 100 megabit throughput on this. That's perfect for most houses. So what if your whole house was able to connect to the internet using the same network that your phone uses? You wouldn't need broadband over power line. You wouldn't need all of those other ISPs that are in the area. You would simply use the cellular phone company. But it's just, you're just switching out one ISP for the other, of course. You know, now you're on an ISP that has wireless connectivity wherever you happen to be. You know, that's powerful, and it's fast. 5G, when you're in a city and they have the 5G frequencies, the higher 5G frequencies and the antennas that are closer to you, you can get up to even faster, much faster speeds, 10 times that speed. Now we really are approaching the upper side of what we are seeing on cable company networks, where 1 gig was almost the standard. Now they're having to increase those numbers just so they can compete with some of these 5G deployments. And we're starting to even see the fiber to the house. Those companies are increasing their speeds up to 2 to 5 gigabits per second, synchronous, both up and down speeds, which is ridiculous. So we don't know where this is going, but the costs are coming down, the speeds are going up, and all of it makes sense to me, except broadband over power line. I've been following that technology for 20 years. It's just never been good. It's an awful technology. And there's very little upside for broadband over power lines. There's so many ways to make it not work and to conflict with everything else that's out there in the world that it just doesn't make sense. I can't even believe we allowed it to be a standard and for it to allow people to roll it out. It creates such a problem with everything around it. You'd have to have a really good reason for using it, I guess. Anyway, that's I don't get often opinionated about these certain technologies because there are advantages and disadvantages to all of them. There's just an overwhelming number of disadvantages associated with broadband over power line, which is it's almost relatively pointless for me to talk about it because it's so bad that you just don't see it in a lot of places. It's just not used a lot. So I guess it's taking care of itself, hasn't it? That's the way these things are supposed to work. We try it. It doesn't work. We decide not to use it. And that's kind of what's happened with that. I like fiber to the house. That's my new favorite. I do not have fiber to my house. I have copper to my house. So I'm doing copper now, but the speeds I get from copper for what I am doing here is a very good way to connect. I've got gigabit speeds down. I think I have 25 megabit up. So there's where you start to see that scaling problem I talked about. I have gig speeds coming this direction, but for me, I have to send you video. Right now, I'm using the other direction. I'm going outbound. I'm uploading to you right now from this studio. So I've got equipment in the back in the data center. It's a closet. I got equipment in the data center that is sending you this video stream using this Blackmagic box. So it is definitely sending a lot of information out. But the max on that link is 25 megabit. That's as much as we can do. Right now, you can even see over my shoulder here, I'm using 5.95 megabits. So 6 megabits is what I'm using right now to send what I hope will be a high-quality HD signal to you. And that's what's going to YouTube. YouTube is repackaging it. It takes about 2 seconds for them to put it into the format that you will use, and that's what they're sending to you. So you're seeing me about 2 to 3, maybe 5 seconds after I send this out, which is very, very good. But why is it 25 megabit going back to the provider if I can get 1 gig coming down? Well, it's about scalability. Sending me that signal over the copper down to my device is one device receiving one signal. Now take everybody in town sending those 25 megabits of data out to the provider. Imagine if everybody had 1 gig. Well, then how do you manage that? Now suddenly I have 1,000 1 gig connections. That's very different possible maximum bandwidths than if you have 1,000 25 megabit maximums. That's why. It's about scalability. It's about being able to scale it and have enough bandwidth for everybody. So that's why they tend to have an asymmetric way to do this. The way that you would see in a lot of fiber environments is they don't market it as asymmetric. They market it as symmetric communication, where if you have 1 gig down, you also get 1 gig up. Will that work or not? Depends on how they engineered it on their side. And I expect it would. There's got to be some very good quality of service or packet shaping going on to manage all of that. And there's specialized equipment for service providers that gives them more control over those streams of data. So that's where that comes from, is being able to make that happen. So if you're someone who's trying to make that happen on your network, look at the providers in your area. Some will provide you with different options, and it may be fiber is a better option for you. Other questions in the chat room. How important is it to be acquainted with Linux? Are there opportunities for Linux professionals? There are tons of opportunities. I kid around all the time. For those of you that have watched me over time and you've seen me in chat rooms and been on my Discord, I constantly tell people Linux is great. It just doesn't work. And I say that only to make people who run Linux as their desktop angry at me. It's a pure troll that I'm doing, and it turns out it's not truthful at all. Linux is incredibly powerful. It is incredibly useful. If you are on ProfessorMesser.com right now, you hop through a number of Linux servers to get to me that I create and manage myself. These are cloud-based Linux servers that I run, that I own, that I manage. I rely on Linux extensively. And every single company certainly in the North America, I would say any company in the world, has some level of Linux working in that company. Maybe they're using it for cloud-based services. Maybe they've rolled out particular applications on it. Maybe they're using it for services. One of those things. There's Linux somewhere in there. They could have Windows on every single desktop. They could have Windows servers in the core of their network, but I guarantee you they've got some Linux as well. And so you often have a group of people that are the Windows administration team, and then another group of people that is the Linux administration team. And you're now able to have different operating systems managed by these people that know details about how these operating systems work and how to implement them the best way. So every company has some level of Linux. Some have more than others. If you go to my cloud provider, one I use quite a bit is Rackspace. Rackspace has extensive Linux support. I'm a good example of needing that Linux support. So when I call the folks in Rackspace and I say, I need help with this Linux server, can you provide me with more details on this? And they can help me with that. Those are people that have been trained in Linux. That's what they do. Now, if I had a Windows server, they would connect me with someone completely different. So that's a good example of a company that hires Linux professionals to talk about Linux all day, every day. That's what they do. And pays pretty good. Pays really good. So think about once you get through your A+, Network Plus, maybe Security Plus as well, and you're thinking, what am I going to do when I grow up? Which is a question I ask myself all the time. What do I want to do? What interests me? You may find that when you work with Windows, it's not one that interests you. Maybe you work with Linux, you think this is an operating system I really like. I'd love to know more about this. I'd love to know everything about this. There's your answer. Go learn everything you need to know about Linux. There's plenty of jobs available dealing with Linux. If you're ever wondering if you're making the right decision there, go to your favorite job posting site for your area. Go to dice.com or LinkedIn Jobs or any of them that are out there. Whatever's the favorite in your particular area. Different geographies and different countries have different job posting websites. Go to the one in your site. Go look for Linux administrator. Just pick Linux, maybe even just Linux, and then search for IT jobs in your area and see what IT jobs are available dealing with Linux. Now, some of them might be Linux developer. We can throw that out. That's not IT. That's development. That's computer science. But when we're talking about IT, it would be Linux administrator, Linux cloud professionals, Linux server administrators, Linux desktop administrators, all of those. That's where you'd want to, that's the jobs you would be looking at. Now, you might even want to compare that, and you might say, what's the difference? Like Windows administrator, how many Windows administrator jobs pop up? Probably a lot more. But the difference is that there tend to be, depends on where you are in the world, there tend to be more people trained in Windows than there is in Linux. So it's not a one-to-one. You have a lot less people competing over Linux jobs than you do Windows jobs, relatively speaking. There's still a lot of people competing over jobs overall, but I'm trying to give you a perspective of that. You can look and compare, but keep in mind these are different comparisons. They really are apples and oranges. Even though the basic job function is the same, the difference in operating systems is remarkable. It's dramatic. It's not the same. You can't take a Windows person and go, okay, you're going to do Linux today, or a Linux administrator and say, okay, you're going to manage Active Directory today. Don't do that. Then that's a problem. But the more you know about more operating systems, the better you're going to be as a professional in technology. So learn as much as you can about Windows. Learn as much as you can about Active Directory. Go set up a Windows server. Go set up a Mac OS device. Go get familiar with the front ends. Go get familiar with the tools and how they operate. If at all, get a detailed knowledge of the operating system. That's a completely reasonable path up the scale of IT, where you start at the help desk, then you jump into Linux, Windows, databases, operating systems, whatever it is, networking, and then from there you just keep moving up. I think Linux is a perfectly reasonable and a powerful job to leverage when you're continuing up the ladder of IT. So that's a long answer for a single question, but that's my perspective of Linux. Also in the chat room, another question that came through: do I plan? Already no. To add, because I don't plan. Do I plan to add video training for CySa Plus or Cloud Plus within this year? Probably not within this year. On average, it takes about 6 months to create a course, a good course. Sometimes shorter, but I think that's a good conservative value to use, is 6 months. So it would not be this year. Whatever comes next would not be this year. It would probably be something that we would start rolling things out this year, but would probably not be completed until next. But what will it be? Will it be CySa Plus? Will it be Cloud Plus? Will it be something else? I don't know. again, this goes back to planning. And whatever I was to plan on today will be very different tomorrow in my mind, or next week, or next month. Because in this industry, the needs that people have of these different technologies changes all the time. And it's a constantly moving landscape. So when I plan to create a course which has such a long investment of time associated with it, it really has to be the right course. And there's a lot of ways to define that. I realize there's no definition of the right course, but it has to be right with a number of criteria that we have internally. It's more of our secret sauce than anything. There's certain things we want to see in a course for it to be viable in this particular model. And by this model, I mean one that's freely available for you to watch every minute of every video, one that provides you with additional options of things to purchase to make it even better once we get it there. So there are different ways to go about doing this, but it changes constantly. I'll lay down in the bed at night and I'll think, maybe, what the right one would be. It'd be, this course really should be what we do next. And then I go to sleep and I wake up in the morning. I think, now that I've slept on it, actually this one is what I keep changing my mind. So this is one of those where I don't know what it's going to be. It's something we're all going to have to wait and see, including myself. I just don't know yet. If I knew, I would tell you, but I don't. It's just going to, if I told you, it would change and then nobody would be happy. So I don't know. I usually will, as soon as I lock in what it is, then I can share that. But until it's locked in, it could really be anything. And my world changes constantly. So we'll have to see. Have to see what that is. A good question. If you're just starting out, how do you find out what you love to do in IT if you're not doing it yet? Well, that's okay. If you're just starting out, you're going to be in a job where you're going to be in charge of a lot of different things. You're going to be in the help desk, and you'll be taking questions about passwords on Active Directory, on problems connecting to a Linux server, on issues with facilities in a data center, maybe a cooling system went out, problems with email, issues with Microsoft 365 in the cloud, problems connecting over a VPN to another site. There's all these things you're going to be dealing with. During that process of troubleshooting these issues, because we talk about help desk as if it's some awful thing. Help desk is you fixing problems. It's you solving problems. It's like a crossword puzzle. It's like a cryptic crossword. It's like you trying to put all of the pieces together and come up with the solution. It's puzzle solving at its best. And when you start solving these puzzles, you'll start to find, I really like solving puzzles about Linux versus I really like solving puzzles about Windows. You'll start to get things and you'll start to gravitate towards them. And you'll start to want to know more about how that works. And you'll naturally start picking up more content about those, or actively going out and finding more information about those technologies just so you can learn more about them. When you start doing that, that's what you like. That's how you find out what you like to do. And by the way, what you like to do in IT today will be different than what you like to do in IT tomorrow. This changes over time. When I started out as a field service tech. That was my first job out of college. I was driving around and plugging in printers, upgrading memory. It was not interesting or sexy, but it was technology. And so parts of it were interesting. Parts of it that got into the operation of RAID. That's where I first saw RAID arrays. It's where I first started dealing with redundancy on services. That's the job where we found the server that had lost a RAID 1 drive and was still operating. That was my very first job. And I thought, that's interesting. This is in a facility that was a power company. So it was a big company. Power company. It was a server. There was network connectivity. There were a lot of things there to like. And I thought, I need to learn more about that. And so that's what I did. I started learning more about that. Now, that got me a job working with an insurance company that had these same technologies, because now I could talk about running into this, finding the RAID, replacing the drives. Plus, I was working with that company anyway. So that sort of led me into sort of a corporate help desk, which was more of a desktop administration. So for Windows, administering a Windows desktop and making sure all the Windows desktops were configured properly. All right, well, that got me into Windows. And then I started getting into other operating systems and looking at network communication. That got me into networking. So suddenly my interest moved from desktop operating systems to server operating systems, and then finally to the network. And now I'm capturing packets. And now I have a whole world of knowledge ahead that I needed to learn about what I'm seeing on the screen and how to manage viewing these packets and how to troubleshoot them and how to read them and how to understand where the problems were occurring and how to recognize the packet capture and where those problems were. That was a whole set of, that was years of my life. And it ultimately ended up with me working for the company that made the protocol analysis products. So the thing I was learning sort of day to day suddenly turned into my primary job. I wasn't looking for that to happen. It just sort of happened. And that's how IT works. IT is so broad. It has so many different facets. It has so many different ways to maneuver through it. There's no single path, that you sort of make your own way. Someone was talking to me earlier this week in a chat and complaining about that and complaining, what, I hate IT. There needs to be an exact path you take. If you wanted to be a doctor, there is a path. You go through a pre-med, then you go through a med program, then you go into doing some type of internship at a hospital, and then finally you can graduate and call yourself, and then you have to take boards, and then finally you're a doctor. Like, there is a very specific, well-used and somewhat antiquated path to become a doctor. So in IT, we don't have that. You can sometimes move in different ways, in different directions with different technologies, depending on your interest. Can't do that as a doctor. If you go to school to be a podiatrist, you're going to fix people's feet. That's what you do. You're a foot doctor. You're a podiatrist. You go to school to be a podiatrist. You spend 4 to 5 years in school doing that. You spend a couple years in an internship as a doctor. You get your own business going as a podiatrist. Now you think, I like feet. I really like? I like eyes. I really want to be an eye doctor. Too late. Unless you go all the way back to school and go through the process of ophthalmology, you're not going to do that. Doctors don't jump around like that. There's no way to do it. It's not functional. There's laws of physics that apply here, and those laws do not allow people to now block off another 5 years of their life just so they can be a different kind of doctor. In IT, we can change our mind every day. If you'd like to be a help desk, be help desk. And then in the help desk, you realize, I really like working with Linux. Go be a Linux expert. Learn everything you need to know about Linux and be a Linux expert. Work there 4 or 5 years, 3 to 5 years, 2.5 years. And then at that point, you can decide, I like the Linux stuff. I really like networking. Voop, now you're a network administrator with switches and routers and firewalls and everything else connected to the network. Now you're doing that and you think, this is great. Now that I understand operating systems and networks, let's go do some security. Let's make these hardened. Let's make these more secure. Let's learn about encryption and VPNs and certificates and HSMs and all of this. And now let's go do IT security. So there's a path, kind of an odd path to get there, but it's not an unusual one. In fact, I sort of described my path into security. That is a very common way to get started in IT security. So that's when I tell people IT is enables you to do whatever you want to do. And if you decide you don't want to do that anymore, you can simply pivot and do something else within IT. The jobs are out there. The opportunities are out there. The more people you meet and the more people you know, the more opportunities you will have available. And you get to decide which one of those technologies you would like to pursue at any particular moment. You can't do that with any other vertical market in the world. Can't do that as a doctor. You can't do that as a lawyer. You can't do that in these other environments. Oh, and by the way, it pays really well. It pays really well. It's scary how well it pays. So IT not only allows you to follow your interest, and as long as you spend the time and become knowledgeable and an expert in those technologies, you will therefore then be compensated appropriately. That's the beautiful part of it. And if you're at a place that isn't compensating you appropriately, there's somebody else in town who is. That's the beauty also of this. So that's why I tell people, don't worry so much about knowing what direction you're going to take. In some ways, you're just in the boat and the boat's going to follow the path. But if at some point that river sort of opens up a bit, help desk is definitely a small stream, but suddenly about 6 months into the help desk, it begins to open up a bit and you start to see a bigger part of the water. And you think, maybe we should go over there with the Windows. Maybe we should go over there with the Linux. Maybe I should go over there with the network. And now you can set your boat to go a particular direction. That's to me, that's the fun of it. That was the most fun when I was in that market, when I was doing those things. That was the fun part of it. Now I'm in a different world now. Now I take all the knowledge that I've accumulated in doing IT all this time, of being in the field of designing some of the biggest networks in the world, of implementing some of the technologies in these company networks. I've seen incredible things. How can I take that knowledge and put it into a set of tools that's going to enable you to do exactly the same thing? So that's the whole point behind this, is that I've seen it. I've done it. I've lived it. I know it's out there because I was there. So that's in my mind, whether it's true or not, I want to believe that makes the training that I do, it gives a different approach to the training when I know what's out there and what works. We talked earlier about even stupid things like the category of cable. It's not a stupid thing, but the arguments around what type of categories are supported by different Ethernet standards is well documented in the Ethernet standards. And yet there's probably no more differing opinions for some reason on the internet than these categories of cable and what's supported over those categories. It's unusual to find something so well documented that is so poorly represented in actual online materials. It's just another good example if it's difficult to trust the internet, and I understand that. So I'm hoping when I bring these videos to you in these study groups and, I don't know, my perspective of the world, it's coming from a place of someone who wants you to be successful in doing this, because I worked with incredibly smart people that were doing exactly the same things that I was doing, where we all knew nothing at the beginning, and we simply worked our way into these jobs where we had accumulated some very specific knowledge that allowed us to be paid very well, and we were able to use that knowledge that nobody else had. That's what you need to work through. That's a real powerful thing, and you can use that your entire career. That will propel you your entire IT career. That's something I think I need to make clear, because maybe people aren't aware of this, is you're working really hard to get these certifications. You're studying all these materials. You're going through a very detailed set of exam objectives. And although it's not like this every day, in IT, you're studying every day. You're learning every day. There are technologies you will find that you know nothing about, and they'll say, you're in charge of this now. Oh, didn't we tell you? You're in charge of this. Here, go do that. Like, I know nothing about that. Yeah, but you know Windows, and it's not Windows, but there's an I in the name, so it's pretty close to Windows. So there you go. And you're in charge of it now. All right, give me the manuals. Let's go read everything there is to know about this thing you've just put into my lap that I'm now responsible for. And if anything goes wrong, I'm the one who has to fix it. That is what we call in the industry a normal day. That is just normal. And that means you'll be going, it's a computer. How hard can it be? Right. That's the mindset. It's all technology. You're a technologist. Go. How difficult can that be? But that's why it's one of those where, oh, okay, well, let me get the books. Let's go start reading. Let's pull up the PDF and read everything we can read about this technology and become more familiar with it. Do we have it in a lab somewhere? I'm going to go run some things in the lab. We're going to go learn for a week. And you would think in the chat room, people are saying that sounds stressful. It's very possible that it would be stressful if you took it that way. But in the world of IT, when this is just the normal thing, this is just the normal day. That's what and when you expect that any moment someone could stop by your desk and plop a new project into your lap of things you have never worked with before in your life, that's normal. Also, keep into your mind, think about there will be technologies introduced over the next 5 years that do not exist today at all. The technologies that roll out there will things that will appear in IT over the next 5 years that as we sit here today in June 2022 don't exist. They are completely unknown at this point. So when you look, somebody 5 years from now comes to your desk and says, you're now in charge of this thing. Well, of course you are. Nobody's seen this before. It's all brand new. Not only are you not familiar with it, nobody is familiar with it. You've now just become the expert in the industry. You may not even realize it, but you've just become the expert in the industry. So that's the beauty of IT as well. You can suddenly be enabled to create and learn and do with these technologies that are brand new, that no one's seen before, but that also gives you potential for the future. Imagine learning a technology that nobody knows about. Now you're suddenly the expert in it. Think of what you can do with that. So whether it's do more within the current job that you're in, whether it's get a new job that pays you better or it gives you different benefits, whatever it is, it gives you options. And as I said earlier in the study group that IT is the great equalizer, that's what I meant, is that you are now in charge of your destiny. Other people throughout your career would love to be in charge of you. They love being, I've worked with managers that love to be in charge, that they think that's the greatest thing is to be in charge. But when you're the one with this knowledge, you're the one with the power. And if you don't like the situation you're in, you just find a new situation. And that's another benefit in IT that you simply don't have in other places. Doctors can't stop what they're doing and go be a different kind of doctor or do something else. You imagine making doctor money, which an increasingly difficult job to begin with, and making a decreasing amount of money every year, it seems. Imagine suddenly thinking as a doctor, I really wish I'd done something else. Well, it's too bad. You can't do that now. You're locked in. To me, that's just a horrible situation. That's the stressful situation to me. IT is the exact opposite of that. There is no stress because I'm in charge. Someone else is not. That's the beauty of it. That's the fun part of it in my mind. Things you would do. Other questions in the chat room. We were talking a little bit in the chat room about age. I got an email about this earlier today. Someone said, I just got my certification. I'm 65. Now, am I going to be able to get, and I've been in IT for a number of years, is someone going to hire me? Is really the question. Other people in the chat room are like, I'm 37, I'm 36, I'm 25. People thinking about the ages that are there. Now, the computers, of course, have no idea how old you are. The computers, they don't care what your age is. Do you know it or do you not know it? That's all the computer cares about. But the people that are doing the hiring are not the computers. The people doing the hiring are people. And whether it is overt or not, whether they know they are doing it or not, there may be times when somebody's making a decision on who to hire based on your appearance. Whether that's legit or not, those situations occur. And the question is there a way, if you're 65, should you be worried about ageism? Is that something that's going to be an issue? And yes, you should be worried about it. It can be an issue. You need to prepare or have a strategy for getting a job with the best possible outcome. But by the way, for those of us that have been in IT for a while, we know people in the industry. You meet people as we go. This is just a normal part of you going from job to job, meeting different people, putting them on your LinkedIn, connecting up with them, always knowing where they are and what they're doing, so that when you get to a point where you are older in the industry, that you're not trying to convince a stranger that you're a good fit for this position. You can go talk to people you already know that are in these jobs or working for these companies, and they can vouch for you and say, he's been around in this industry forever because he knows everything, because he already knows this technology. He would do amazing in this job. You should hire him. Someone internal in your company telling you this, like, I know him, I've worked with him before, I already know what he knows, and he'd do great here. Don't worry about it. Get them on board. Let's get this going. That is much stronger. Suddenly the worries about ageism or any other type of ism go out the door when somebody else is vouching for you. And I always tell people in this industry, and it really cannot be mentioned enough, have a good network. I'm not talking about your 1000 base T. I'm not talking about your 10G base T. I'm talking about people networking. Always keep a list of people and always link in with them. We're not talking about family members. This isn't Facebook where you have to be very knowledgeable. You have to have been at their child's christening to be on their Facebook. That's not what I'm talking about. Every single person you meet in the industry is an opportunity to connect with them at a professional level, and LinkedIn is a great way to do that. There's probably other ways to do this, but today LinkedIn is what we use. I'm not promoting LinkedIn over anything else. I'm promoting what LinkedIn provides for us, is a way to keep track of everybody. So when you meet someone, say, it was great to meet you. Can I send you a LinkedIn request? And they'll go, yeah, absolutely. I'll add you. Now, whether they add you or not, that's up to them. But having the connection and knowing where you met them, make notes in your LinkedIn, met them at the trade show in Atlanta on July 2022. Just so you can remember somebody you're not going to run into a lot. Or if you work with people, make sure you add the people you're working with. Don't wait until you leave. Add them when you're at the current company, because these will be people you're going to want to keep track of the rest of your career. You already know them. You already worked with them. You know their strengths. You know what they know. They're going to grow in their jobs. They're going to grow with their knowledge. They're going to go to different companies. And it's amazing when you get, just try to get 5 people on the LinkedIn, maybe 10 people on your LinkedIn, and you will suddenly see the web of people suddenly move. After about a year, people will go find other jobs. They'll meet other people. Maybe at a job they go to, they'll meet someone else. I used to travel from place to place. I used to be a road warrior. My job was to get up on Monday, get on a plane, travel the country, and then come back home on a Friday. And I would go from company to company to company to company, talking about the technologies that we had. And it was remarkable how often I would walk into a company and I'd see someone I knew. And I'd be someone I worked with. I worked in Miami. I walk into a company in South Carolina and there's somebody I knew. And that's one of the great things, is I could meet up with that person. I wasn't expecting to see you here. Here's what's been going on. You can meet again. You can do this. Let me get on your LinkedIn. Let's get you linked up. I didn't have them on the LinkedIn. I had no idea they were there. Let's get on my LinkedIn. Let's keep track of what's going on. And that way, not only are you keeping track of where people are, but now you can ping them when you need a job. Like, hey, I'm looking for a job in this area. If you know anybody looking, let me know. Or even better, you have a job you need to fill, and you're like, I know 3 people who'd be great for this. Let me go send them LinkedIn messages. And that's what I did. I'd send them LinkedIns, and we get them jobs. That's one of the best ways to take advantage of that LinkedIn. You're always knowing what people are doing. It's remarkable how quickly that web starts to grow as you get more people and people do other things. Very, very useful. So make sure you make that happen. For those of you wondering, since this is the 220-1001 study group, on my website, I do have the newer videos, the 220-1101 videos. And as I mentioned, all those videos that are on my site that course is done. So right now, the 220-1101, I say right now, permanently, there's 68 videos, 9 hours, 36 minutes. It's the entire course. So for those of you looking for an entire video training course for the 220-1101, goes all the way through the final set of exam objectives 5.7 troubleshooting networks. It's all there. Look at all that. That's plenty. That was 68 videos in a very short period of time. You don't even know. So is the 1101 series finished at 68 videos? It is indeed. That is full and complete. An entire course ready for you. Any plans on releasing 1102 videos? Well, yeah, that's any plans. Yeah, there's plans. There are plans. It's already underway. We're already creating the 1102 videos. It's already in production. And videos, as I create them, I was literally editing them this morning. As I create them, they are posted online. So I usually do chunks, like 4 or 5 at a time, and we just put the chunk out there. So I usually will shoot a bunch of video during a sitting. Then the next day I'll edit all those and then post them online and then do another chunk. So we just do them a chunk at a time and get them out. So there's not plans on releasing 1102 videos. There's going to be 1102 videos. They're already in production. It's more than plans, the whole thing. And then after that, the course notes already done, so that's finished. Practice exams will get updated. That won't take long. So, you know, these things are coming along. But as I mentioned, when they first released the exam objectives, it takes months to create this content, not just my content, but content from any publisher, because they have to be right. They have to be right. I was going to say they have to be good, but if you've seen things from other publishers, that isn't always the case. They have to be right. My videos, I don't think take longer than most, but I spend a lot of time on the content itself being as accurate as possible and as direct as possible towards how this technology is used in practical networks, because that's my background. So I try to approach it from the perspective of what am I going to need to know when I walk into the data center or when I walk into that conference room for that project, what technologies are going to be thrown at me. That's why in the pre-show we talked about the difference between the TCP/IP model and the OSI model, and the fact that the TCP/IP model isn't real, doesn't exist anywhere, nobody talks about it outside of a classroom. But the OSI model is one we talk about all the time. It's the normal language of IT networking. So that's one of those that you really do have to work on, is knowing what you need to know and when. And yeah, 1102 videos are, of course, they're the next set of videos to roll out is the 1102. And there'll be some tomorrow. There'll be 1102 videos out, I'm sure. If all goes well today, there will be 1102 videos tomorrow, the next day, somewhere in there, and they will just keep coming out. That's the thing that's probably a little bit different than you will find most places, is I don't set any dates to complete these because there are a lot of variables involved in doing this. It takes a long time to write the content. That's probably the longest amount of time is done before you ever see the first video. It's just the writing of the content. And then the videos I have to sit in the studio. I have to shoot the videos in here. I have to then come in and edit what I just shot. Then if I mess anything up in that shoot, because sometimes I'll say the wrong word, or I meant to say TCP and it was really UDP, those are problems that have to be fixed. That's a sort of a factual issue that you could probably figure out if you looked at the screen and you looked at the transcript. You could figure it out, but I like to be as accurate as possible. So sometimes I have to go back and edit some of the voiceover or reshoot some of the content. That's completely normal. And then get it all out. And then once it's out, I get transcripts done of those. Real people sit down and write transcripts of them and do the closed captions. And then they sit there, and if anybody finds something else I messed up, then I go back and correct it. But in about a month, it's locked down, and that's pretty much it, and you're good. That's the process. And so later today, I'm working on more editing of the 1102 content. Tomorrow I'm shooting more 1102 videos, and we're probably editing more 1102 videos. So it's just a continuing process. It's very cyclical, as you can imagine. I spend a lot of time writing the content, and then I spend a lot of time shooting and editing the content, and then more shooting and editing. So these waves of shooting and editing. And then at some point, I'm done, and now we can work on the next thing, whatever that is. I don't know what it is. I don't know how that works. But that's it. I think is the challenge you will find as you're going through all of this is that these take time to produce. And it's not just me, it's every publisher takes time to produce this content. But I want it to be right. And that's why I don't give you a date, is because with all of those different variables and different things happening, it's very hard to maintain and keep everything on a certain schedule. And things happen in your life. What if someone gets sick, or you need to do some extra things during one morning? You lose half a day because you have a project that needs to be done at home, or there's something you need to go take care of, a particular thing at the bank. All right, that takes all day. You know, that's a whole day. And then what do? Do I speed up the process of editing to fit a predetermined arbitrary date that I stuck on a calendar? No, I'm not going to limit or subject my product to lesser quality just because somebody threw a dart at a calendar. That makes no sense at all. So I don't throw a dart at the calendar. I don't set a particular date because I'm already trying to get it done as fast as possible. There's no possible way for me to go faster than what I'm doing. So I don't have to worry about forcing people to go fast. I don't have to set a date to drive people to success, Mr. Manager. I'm already driving myself to success. I'm already there. So I'm working as hard as I can. It'll get done whenever it's done. And when it's done, it's the best possible thing I could have done. That I know that when I complete it, I could not have done it any better. I didn't take anything out of it. I didn't cut corners. I didn't try to get it out faster than someone else. That doesn't make sense either. These things are going to be around for 3.5 years. They need to be good and they need to be right. And so that's what our priority is, good and right. So that's my key. Will I keep my 1001, 1002 videos up on YouTube? I never remove anything from YouTube. If you wanted to go back and look at my 600 series course, you could. Let's go do that. How ridiculous would that be, everybody? Let's go to my YouTube. Let's see. I've got a bookmark here for my YouTube studio. Let's go to my YouTube video, my studio. You can't see this because I don't want you to see this yet, but I'm going to pull up the content and let's go to the 220 601 course. I'm just going to type that in and see if I can find any videos on a 220 601. And back in July 19th of 2010, let's look at a video on, what do we have? Let's just do the first one on this list. Do I have a link to YouTube? I do. There is the training course. Do I have me in? Here it is. So there's professors. Oh, there we go. There we go. Look, we had music. There was, I hope that music didn't get on here too much. There it is. Let's listen in. Great overview of exactly what's inside of this training course and these series of videos. I'm James Messer. I'll be your host. See, there you go. So if you wanted to go back and look at the 480p 601 series of courses in 2006, you could do that. How scary is that? What happened to me? There I am. Now, who's younger? That's just a child doing videos on YouTube. What happened there? There he is. So it's there. The headphones really make it. The headphones hide the baldness, which is just as dramatic as nothing changed. It's the same guy. Got a little bit more of a tan. Lighting's a little better. Camera angle's better. But that's that. All my videos will be there. So I never change the videos. They're always there. I never remove anything. It's all there. Oh, the beard de-aged me. Well, you know, if that's what it takes, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. That works for me. I'll take the de-aging of the video. That's whatever it takes. If that's what, I'll keep it forever. That's what it takes. It all works okay for me. And that's why I always leave everything there. There may be times when you want to go back and find something on an older technology. Maybe you're having to troubleshoot Windows NT. Well, you'll go back to one of my old Windows NT videos and watch the Windows NT information, which I think was part of 601. It's in there, and it's on YouTube, and you can search for it. It's all available. So I never remove anything because I never know who might want access to that data. I obviously don't keep an index on my website that's obviously there because I don't want people coming to my site and somehow finding the 601 videos and watching them to learn about Windows NT. You know, it's not going to help them. They want the latest one. So all of the main links on my site are all going to the latest version of videos. So that's it. Any estimates on when a new Security Plus will be here? There's a good question. Let's find out. I, of course, have a calendar with all of the retirement dates for everything already calculated out. CompTIA has not talked about retirement for the 601. The SY0601 was released on November 12th of 2020. It is estimated to retire, therefore, on May of 2024. So you've got quite a bit of time before Security Plus goes anywhere. May of 2024 would be the estimated retirement for the SY0601. So you got lots of time. The Security Plus isn't going anywhere. You're fine. You're good. Once they're released, they're good. They're going to be available for 3.5 years. So that's where those dates come from. That's an estimate. That is. There's been no announcement from CompTIA. You're way ahead of the game on that one. You're not going to hear anything from CompTIA until you get closer to an actual release date of new content. So that's it. How different is this content from the 600 series to now? It's a completely different course. Very little of the 600 series course is in the 1100 series course. You've got all these changes to operating systems, to hardware. You know, in the 601, there were four separate A+ exams. You had to take 2 of them. It was a different world entirely, and different equipment. So that's why I tell people, don't go back and look at those older things. It's just not great. At that time, with those videos, let me think about the 600 series. You know, at that point, did I buy good lighting at that point? I think I bought some lights at that point. And that worked pretty well. Let's look at the lights. I think at that point I had the LED lights in, but there was a time in earlier videos I did a course on Nmap, and the Nmap course it had some halogen lights I pulled in from my garage, you know, and it got like 120 degrees when I was trying to shoot video. But this course I think I'd bought. At least at some point in here, it looks like I went to this is the 601 course, but somewhere in there, I obviously changed to 16:9. It's hard to see on this screen. The first one we just saw was definitely 480p, but it looks somewhere in there I went to a 16:9, so that's good. That must be in the second part of the course. We're doing some computer management. We're talking about what the power users group does. Some more. There's the same content though. You know, some of this, you've seen my password. You know, those are the things that you just run into with these videos, is just constant change. So there's very little. Do you think there's time to start and finish the 1001 and 1002? For many people, yes. I think most people, it probably takes them a month or a month and a half to get through this content, which gives you plenty of time to finish the 1001 and 1002. But you're talking about 4.5, just over 4.5 months. There may be some people, I mentioned like me, where that probably isn't enough time. So if you were me, you would take the 1100 series. If you are you and you get through it very fast, you would take the 1000 series. So that's it. If we're currently studying for the 1001, would it hurt us at all to watch the new 1101 videos? Yes, it would. Do not do that. It would actually be pretty harmful. If you want to hear the same content repeated, you should watch the videos over again. Don't watch videos made for a different course. You will get confused. It will be ridiculous to do that. So you will learn things you don't need to know, and you won't be learning things you do need to know. So that's the real problem. Never watch or use materials written for a different version of the exam than you're planning to take. I cannot talk any stronger about how important that is. Never study from materials that are different than the one you're planning to take. So important. Other people in the chat room say, don't bother with 1101, or with 1001 and 1002 at this point. I don't necessarily agree with that either. There's so few study materials available right now for the 1101 and 1102. So because it's hard to find a book. Why would you study from a course where it's hard to find a book? Go study from a course where you have tons of study materials available, the 1001 and 1002. That just makes sense, because if you take the 1001 and 1002 and pass those, you're A+ certified. If you take the 1101 and 1102 and pass those, you're A+ certified. You're exactly the same thing. You get exactly the same certification on exactly the same piece of paper, written exactly the same way. There's no difference in the A+ that you earn. The only difference is what test you took to get there. That's the only difference. So that's why I tell people, why wouldn't you take the one that's easier, where there's more study materials and more people have taken the exam and there's more labs available and there's more Q&A available? Why wouldn't you make this easier on yourself? And right now, the 1001 and 1002, they're the easier ones to take. Your problem is timing. Your problem is how quickly can you get through this content. Some people can do it in a month. Some people can do it in 2 months. If that's the case, that's a perfect choice for you. But some people, it takes 3 months, and you can't do both of these and take 3 months. That's 6 months worth, and by that point, it's already been retired. So for those people, it wouldn't make sense to take the 1001 and 1002 because it's just too far out. That's the whole problem. So you're going to have to figure out the one that fits best with you. Is it possible to take Core 1 from the 1001 and Core 2 from the 1102? No, it is not. Both exams have to be taken from the same exam series. You cannot mix and match. So that's another consideration. You can't take and pass the 1101 and then think, I'm going to take the you pass the 1001, you can't go take the 1102 in December and be A+ certified. You can't combine those. Both of them have to come from the same series. So you have to take the 1001, 1002 or the 1101, 1102, but not some combination of those two things together. That won't work. And that's why I tell people, you don't want to be in the position where you've passed the 1001 and then it's retired and you don't have the opportunity to take the 1002. You got to start over again. So that's the challenge. Now, for people concerned, the argument, and I get it, where people will say, I'm going to take the 1101, 1102 because that's newer content and I'll have the newer certification. Well, maybe, but nobody thinks of it as a newer certification. For example, anyone who took their A+ exam 7 years ago, they got certified on their A+ 7 years ago with the 900 series exam. Okay. But every 3 years, they renewed the certification. And so today, they remain A+ certified because throughout the years, they've gone through at least 2 different certification processes. So when they did that, they continued to be A+ certified. That means someone who is A+ certified now from an exam they took 7 years ago is just as A+ certified as someone who passes the 1101 and 1102 exams today. So there's your thing, is that the version of the test you take means nothing. In fact, it's not even on your certification. It's not even, nobody keeps track of it except CompTIA so that they can renew it later on. But employers don't care that you took the latest exam. All they care about is that you're A+ certified and that your certification is current. And if you took your exam 7 years ago and renewed it every 3 years, you're just as A+ certified today. You're just as qualified as someone who just took the newest exams and passed them today. That's the important part, is employers don't care. Now, you personally may want to take the latest exams because you feel that the content of those exams fits better into what you might see in today's world. That's perfectly reasonable. I think that's a fine argument. And if that's your perspective, absolutely do that. But as other people said in the chat room, well, why don't you take the 1001 and 1002 and think you just watch the new videos once you're certified? Same thing. So this is about, and I don't want to put too much of a sort of an odd perspective of this, but our goal here is to get you certified and is to make you as knowledgeable as possible about the exam objectives that are on your certification exam. There's topics outside the scope of the exam that are important in IT. We don't talk about those. There's topics outside the scope of operating systems and Linux and Mac OS and security and networking we don't even talk about in the A+ exam. And those topics are important, but they're not on the exam. So we don't cover them because our goal is to get you the certification. I'm assuming once you get certified, you can go learn all the things you don't know yet. So I don't have to teach you those now. My goal is to teach you exactly what you need to know to pass the exams. So that's why I'm very specific about sticking to the objectives, because our goal is to get you certified. There are plenty of other YouTube channels you can go to and books and materials you can buy that will teach you different topics, and you should absolutely learn about any of those that interest you. It will help you immensely in your career. But our goal here is to get you certified first, then you can use that knowledge to keep going. That's the perspective. So I absolutely agree and don't necessarily think that's a bad idea that you get the latest version of the cert, but we also have to think about what the best possible chance of you passing is and which combination of exams makes the most sense. And that's why today I think the 1001 and 1002 that have been around for 3.5 years are really the best possible path to earning your cert. Of course, we have to take the calendar into account. We have to take how long you think you're going to be. I get that. But if somebody, even after saying all that, says, I know, but I really want to take the new exam, okay, I get it. And that's, it's probably not the best path, but it is a path. And if you already understand the limitations of taking that path, you can compensate for those. So I don't, and also, by the way, I don't think the 1101, 1102 exams are any more difficult than the 1001, 1002. I think the difficulty level of those exams is comparable. I don't think they're asking you any harder or easier questions on the newer one. I think the questions are just as hard as the old one. So that's why I tell people, just pick which one you want to go with, which one makes sense for you, which one fits best with you, go with that one. That's the idea. You mentioned needing to know someone in IT to help get a job in IT. Does it matter if they live in a different state than you do? Well, I'm in a state of confusion, so everyone's in a different state than I am. What would be super helpful is if in the process of looking for these jobs, knowing someone who works at a company, knowing someone who works at the same company you're trying to get the job in is the important part. Whether they even work in that same building or state or country isn't necessarily as important as them actually being an employee of that company who can reach out to HR and say, this is a friend of mine, and if you have a chance, if you think they would fit into this role, you should absolutely talk to them because they'd be good. Having someone inside that company who can vouch for you, who already is on the payroll, is valuable. Whether they are in the same building, the same room, the same state, the same country, or not. Just having someone who can vouch for you at that company makes a big difference. So find your people. Keep them on the LinkedIn. For example, I had someone I worked with in Miami who got me an interview with a company in Virginia. So that's a really good example of jumping from one state to another, because they got a job working for a company that had their group that was hiring was out of Virginia. So they said, you should go talk to them. And they gave them my resume. They got me a flight to Virginia in the winter. that was fun, being in Florida. I'm in Miami. It's 80 degrees. I'm hopping on a plane to go to an interview the next day. They fly. This is They don't really do much of this anymore. We do most of this on Zoom now. But they put me on a plane. They drove me they flew me to Virginia, where I literally hopped on the train at the airport, took it to their office. It dropped me off right at their office. I went upstairs, did the interview, hopped back on the train, went back to the airport, and flew home. It was a one-day deal. And literally on the train, as I'm going back to the airport in Virginia, I want to say I flew out of Dulles, and on that train, the edict from their corporate came down that they had hiring freezes that suddenly got put in place. So I did this entire day of travel when, in fact, walking out the door was literally and figuratively closed behind me. Turns out I didn't get that job. That job was actually based out of Virginia. I would have needed to move to Virginia. And in retrospect, that would have been an awful decision, assuming I would have taken it. So that's one where sometimes these things happen for a reason. Could I put some type of larger perspective on that? Maybe. Maybe it was just coincidence. Who knows? But that might have changed. We may not be having this conversation right now had that happened. One never knows. You just kind of have to, as I mentioned, you just get in the boat and you just follow where the boat takes you. Sometimes the stream is very specific about where your travels are going to go. Sometimes it opens into the estuary and you can decide what part of the bay fits for you and you can go that direction. You just never know. That's the beauty of IT. It's not everybody's cup of tea. I realize that, but it certainly gives you options. And I think for someone who's looking for a job that gives you the ability for you to decide how you would like your life to be, that's pretty powerful. That's good stuff. And there's plenty of options out there. I've had bad IT jobs. Don't get me wrong. I've had some awful IT jobs. I have had jobs that were demeaning and made me feel awful. You know what I did? I left and I went somewhere else. Problem solved. That's what the beauty of IT gives you, is options. So that's why I think you should embrace those. I think that's valuable. I don't think that's difficult. I don't think it's scary. I don't think it's stressful. I think it's great. I think it's valuable, and I think it's something you should embrace, because that power is something that allows you to make your life what you want it to be. Everybody else wants your life to be something else. You're the only one who really knows what you want your life to be, and you get to make those decisions if you have the power. Other questions. I realize we're going on and on and on, but other questions. This is one. Do I recommend the A+ cert for resume purposes, or would I only recommend it if you have a specific job opportunity that requires it? Well, both, actually. I think employers want you to have the A+. I think employers who aren't even specifically asking for the A+ like to see it on a resume. And here's the thing that I found is that when I got my A+ certification, I had already been in the industry for 10, 15 years. I know it looks like I just started, but that's how long it had been. I had not gotten the certification. I got my Security Plus first because I was working for a security-related company. And then I got my Network Plus second. I did it backwards. And then I got my A+. And I found, as someone who had been a remote field service person, I had been in a corporate help desk. I had done desktop administration, server administration, network management, network analysis, and had worked up to a level of cybersecurity that I had really not taken the time to understand for RAID what all of those different RAID types were, and that there was even more than one RAID type. Oh, I just thought it was mirroring. I thought that's how it worked. What? There's other kinds? There's striping? What is that? So you start learning more about the underlying technology. You get into Windows and you realize, here, you should run Reliability Monitor. Like, Reliability monitor? What is that? What are you talking about? Are you making this up? Is that just something you made up? That's a made up? No, it's a real thing. Oh, it's not only a real thing, that's a really nice utility. Wow, where'd this come? Things were in the operating system I had no idea was there. So unless you go through one of these types of courses to understand the nuances and the details underneath the surface, you may have no idea those things even exist. So I was able, I'll give you an example of this. I got a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer certification, an MCSE. It's a certification type they got rid of, then they brought it back. Now they got rid of it again. So it doesn't exist anymore, but everybody wants you to have it, but it doesn't exist. The MCSE, when it was out the first time through, very popular. Everybody wanted an MCSE to be working for them. I got an MCSE. You have to take 6 certification exams to earn it. And every certification exam was on the latest version of Windows, which at the time was Windows NT 4.0. So this was prior to Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows XP, Windows 7, 8, 8.110, 11. So all that's before all of those versions of Windows. But all of the foundation that I learned in those Windows NT courses revolved around NTFS, Active Directory, Active Directory management, understanding connecting these different services together, how Windows networks things, how shares operate, the difference between a local share, a local NTFS permission setting and a network share, all of those things that, oh, I forgot Vista. Did I though? So all of those things that I learned back in the day, I still have knowledge of and in fact still use. Heck, the course you just saw on the 1101 and what you'll see on the 1102 are all there. That's knowledge that I accumulated, that I became familiar with and simply continued to update as I went through my entire career. So sometimes you'll run into these things you'll learn, and then suddenly you realize, wow, I learned Ethernet a long time ago. I learned about packets and frames a long time ago, but we've just continued to maintain that knowledge and add to it as the years have gone on. I think A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus are perfect examples of where you can start so that you can then add on to that technology knowledge throughout your entire career, and you will, because these things just don't go away. The Windows and Windows NT, it's not a lot different than where we are today. The underlying foundation of the operating system remains very similar in many ways. Of course, there are many things that have changed. All you have to know are what those changes are. So that I think is the beauty of this. Thank you, Riddell, in the chat room with a $5 super chat. Put it in there during all of my talks saying thank you for all the insight. You're very welcome, and thank you for listening. Thank you for being here and doing that. That is the challenge. MCSE, I'm going to have to pull out. I know where my certifications are. One of these days, we will pull these out, and I will show you my Microsoft MC. We'll do that Thursday. I'll bring out my I think I have a folder in here with all of my physical certifications in it. And we'll pull these out and just see what in the world is this old. We'll blow the dust off of it. The dust will go everywhere, and we'll pull it out. It'll be a scroll that has some type of a wax mark on it. We'll pull off the wax mark. We'll unroll it, and we'll have a look at what's on the inside. We'll do that Thursday. I'll make a note to put that in my pile of things for Thursday. Something worth looking at. For now, though, I think we've gone way over time, but I think it was all good. We got great questions from all of you. And really, that's what does this. We just spend time in the after show hanging out, figuring out the best answer to some of these questions we're dealing with. And it's always something new and something interesting. We wouldn't be able to do it without your support. So thank you for being here in the first hour where I was asking you the questions. And the second hour is always fun too. I just never know what it's going to be. And we want to thank you for being here. We love doing these live streams. We love having you here. We're doing another one on Thursday. This is Tuesday. Come on back in 2 days. We're going to do a 10:02 study group. I've already written the questions. They're already locked in the library. They're in the vault. We'll be pulling them out of the vault, and we'll be going through them on Thursday. We'll do it all over again. We hope you come back to see us then. It's 12 noon Eastern on Thursday, the 9th of June. We'd love to have you out here. And, of course, you can always check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar if something in my crazy world happens to change between now and then. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for all of your support. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.